It all begins in the city of demons. On the ground lies a pile of bodies of the last heroes who tried to confront the king. On the throne, he says he's eager to face a real hero. It's been 100 years since anyone decent appeared. He's the demon lord Belmont, and 100 years ago, the hero who mastered the power of fire came to face him. And with icy flames, he killed him. 90 years ago, the hero who had mastered the element of water came here, and he caused him to drown in boiling waters. 70 years ago, it was the turn of the hero who mastered the power of the wind, who was defeated within a tornado. 50 years ago, the Earth hero, whom he buried in crystal sand. After that, no other hero appeared. But at this moment, a spherical heroine arrived for the duel. She says she finally found herself eager. She's stepping on the head of one of the Demon King's subordinates. And from the throne, Belmont asks if she hasn't learned her lesson. He mastered all the elements, so no one stands a chance against him. However, the spherical heroine says that men love to exaggerate their abilities, but the only way to know how much he can take is by going at him. And she jumped towards him. The battle between the two lasted 7 days and 7 nights, until finally she exchanged saliva with Belmont, who felt that his body was being controlled by an unknown magic. He tried to react, but his strength was fading. When she took her mouth off, sparks flew. How delightful, how dangerous. Belmont asked what that power was, and she said it was the method of jewel cultivation. And with that, the invincible Demon King was finally defeated by a hero. The girl's name was Alia, and now 50 years later, only the ruins of the Demon King's castle remain. An instructor is taking her class to visit the Demon King's museum, and everyone is excited to see the place, but she warns them not to touch anything. She is a royal knight. Inside, everyone is impressed, and on the throne, the Demon King is preserved until now. She tells the children that after he was defeated, he was turned into a statue. Since then, the human world has lived in peace, all thanks to Miss Alia, the heroine who defeated him. The instructor was going to take them to see more of the castle. When she saw the maid beside her, she pulled her arm and showed her to everyone. Because of the hero's compassion, they allowed the demons to still live among them. However, they can be identified by the horns on their heads. She then throws the girl to the ground, and warns that although they have survived, they no longer possess magic. All their powers were sealed along with the Demon King, so they no longer pose any danger. And with that, they move on to the next exhibition room. However, the demon girl stands up and says they just need to wait until tonight and everything will change. Night falls and the demon girl finds herself face to face with the statue of the king. She prepared a magic amplifier made with dragon saliva. It's been 50 years, but she finally collected enough. And today is the day she will use it on the Demon King. She says she only has one chance. So she opens the bottle and drinks and instantly feels that she has regained some of the power she had long ago. She then, drooling, chants the spell. A pentagram appears above her and a lightning strikes her palms and the ground. She concentrates the power and goes towards the Demon King. After the flash of light, she falls to her knees, begging for it to have worked. But all she did was create a small crack, which suddenly starts to break. The girl cries, saying that finally the Demon King Belmont is back. And where the stone was, a little boy appears. He says he feels like he's been sleeping for a long time. The girl asks if he really is King Belmont. He says he is, and who is she? By his gaze, she recognizes that it really can only be him. You can feel it from the aura he exudes, and she sends him off on a mountain adventure. She says it's her, Lacey, and the Demon King is confused. He remembers her on the ground and looks at the gigantic spheres and asks why she's pretending to be Lacey. She couldn't have that much maternal power. However, Lacey warns that actually she's like this. It's just that after the war, she lost her abilities, and that made the demons even change their appearance. All this time, she's been pretending to be someone else, working and buying dragon saliva in the black market. After 50 years of hard work, she finally resurrected him. Clutching the mountains, she says she also misses the skinny form. While Belmont can't believe that the skinny version was really an illusion. He then remembers what happened before he was defeated. That woman used some kind of element he had never encountered before. Lacey says it doesn't matter, that finally he's back and now the demons will regain all their power. But Belmont says he's not interested and she asks why. He explains that there are better things to do. She shouts at him asking what could be more important than restoring the glory of the demon race. Putting on his shirt, he says he's been a re-demon for 1,000 years, he's tired of it. Not to mention that apparently everyone is living peacefully, right? Lacey tries to calm down, remembering that in demon years he's still just a teenager. She then asks what power that girl used against him. They need to find out so he can be prepared. Belmont thinks and says he remembers that the name. Lacey is curious to know, just say it. He then says it's a method of bodily fluid exchange via mouth, and she called it dual cultivation, something he had never heard of. Lacey is a bit shy there and asks what the sensation was like with dual cultivation. Belmont says it was strange. All his blood started rushing to the lower part of his body and it was an indescribable pain. Lacey thinks he's a new boy. It really is unknown magic to him. Suddenly, the instructor appears behind them, saying she thought something was wrong, and recognizes the boy as the demon king who mastered the 4 elements. She never expected such a weak woman like Lacey would be able to resurrect him. Lacey tells him to protect himself and run, but suddenly she's thrown against the wall and slammed to the ground. Belmont asks if she's okay, but she tells him to run. The instructor says it's not time to worry about others, and says not to underestimate her magic, but Belmont says her magic is ridiculous. He looks at his. He reaches out his hand, but nothing happens. Everything is still sealed indeed. A sword slash sends a barrage of wind that throws him. Lacey runs to help him, and Belmont realizes he has a human and weak body. Seeing the situation, the instructor thinks it's the perfect chance for a promotion. Lacey apologizes, saying it's all her fault. But Belmont wants to know why the instructor is saying they're weak. Is the demon race being treated like this? Lacey explains that yes. After he was defeated, the Emperor signed a treaty saying that humans and demons would be treated the same. But the truth is that demons are treated like trash by humans. Belmont smiles and, looking at Alia's statue, says she also didn't succeed apparently. Lacey activates a pentagram beneath her, saying she learned some magic from humans and she'll buy him some time to escape. The instructor says she doesn't stand a chance, and Belmont recognizes that with that power, Lacey won't be able to win. He just woke up, he can't be imprisoned again. But when he tries to activate the magic, everything is still sealed. The 4 elements he mastered can't be used, but he feels some unknown magic in his heart. He calls Lacey, who asks what's up, grabs her little arm, and comes for the salve exchange. Lacey seems to like it a little. She's shy, sparking as always. But some black lightning bolts start coming out of his back. Damn, that's too much spark, Evan's boy. Belmont says he's feeling it's working. The only power that remained with him in the last 50 years, the dual cultivation method. The instructor sends a barrage of wind his way, but he stretches his arm against her power and says, burn and die. An explosion happens in her face, leaving her wrecked, wondering what the hell. Magic out of nowhere was that. Belmont says it's the power behind the heroine that sealed him. She's lucky he hasn't mastered that magic yet, or she would have turned to ashes. The instructor says it's impossible. How could a demon trash like him learn the heroine's magic? Belmont tells her to show a little more respect for the demon race, and with that, she's finished on the ground. He then calls Lacey, who's a bit embarrassed now, and says he wants to remove that demonic seal from the entire human race. She says that's a great idea. She's excited, and the boy then looks back and tells her, take me to the place with the most women in this country. Let's cultivate until we're tired. Lacey is obviously confused, but Belmont explains that he's going to use the dual cultivation method to revive the entire demon race. The city of Hosey was named after Alia Hosey, the heroine who defeated Belmont. It used to be known as the Demon City, but now it's the most prosperous human city. As long as you have money, you can get whatever you want. Anything you want, there are foxes, succubi, and the place is buzzing. Inside, there's Lacey and Belmont, surrounded by a bunch of girls who are saying that he's extremely welcome. The fox offers a tea of essences, saying he'll be very relaxed. And the snake girl warns him to be careful with her, or he'll end up very entangled with her. The slime asks if he wants to have some sticky fun. Even Belmont is a little embarrassed by all of this, but he knows it's to restore the demon's power. The fox then asks which one he will choose. Belmont says he's not here to make choices. Lacey is moved. The king really isn't that kind of person. But he says he wants all of them. They are overjoyed, saying it's a great choice, and start leading him away, saying he has great taste. Lacey is thinking that in the end, all men are the same. But Belmont is curious to know if his power activates differently with other races. But one of them suddenly takes off his hood of saying he doesn't need to be shy in here. But everyone is startled when they see that he has 2 little horns. He goes to pick up the tea, and she takes it from his hand, goes to pick up the grape, and she takes that too. Belmont asks what's wrong, and now they all turn into monsters, and they are both thrown out. The girls warn that they thought they were some rich adventurers and not just some demon trash. They better never show up there again. With that, they go in, and Lacey says she warned him not to take off the hood. But on a wall there, a succubus laughs in their faces, saying it's ironic to see 2 lost demons like that nowadays. In the city of Hosey, a demon can barely survive. If they want to blame someone, blame the Demon King for losing the war. Lacey says that's not true. It has nothing to do with the Demon King. And the succubus is impressed that after 50 years, someone still defends him. Belmont gets up and goes to her asking if she wants to fight, but he stares at her and she starts trembling. Our hero asks how a demon can live a good life in this city. The succubus realizes she can't deny answering him and says the only way is if he becomes a student at the Almont Hero Academy. But the entrance exam is in 2 days. Belmont tells Lacey to get up, they're going, but the succubus says it's impossible for them to pass. Demons without magical powers stand no chance. But Belmont warns her not to worry, because the Demon King always corrects his mistakes with his own hands. 2 days later, a guy tells them they're not qualified for the exam and can go home. They're startled and lying there on the ground. Now they find out that for a demon to take this test, they need a recommendation letter from a noble. Lacey says they should try something else while Belmont is depressed, saying he's a trash demon king, just a loser with a horn. She remembers that he only gets so sad when it takes more than 10 seconds to defeat a hero. She has to do something to wake him up, but suddenly a lightning bolt strikes next to the two of them and he goes flying. Lacey goes to see if he's okay. And a monocle guy tells a miss called Alice to give up. Alice says she won't forgive him next time and now she's going to pass. The girl's name is Alice Rosie, the same last name as the heroine. Lloyd tells her that she can't take the same test as ordinary people. They prepared the best path for her. Meanwhile, Belmont is getting up, beaten down. But Alice says she doesn't want to hear about that person anymore. And she conjures a phoenix magic towards him. But he creates some barriers and blocks it all, warning her that it's useless for now. As promising as she may be, it's still too early. She continues to attack with magic, but he keeps defending calmly. But once again, one of the spells rebounds and hits Belmont in the face. Lacey notices something, and in front of Lloyd, Belmont appears. An explosion rocks the city, and a second later, the guy is finished on the ground. Alice wants to know who this boy is, and Belmont tells the old man to be more careful when fighting. But the guy isn't getting up, so he goes to him to make him apologize. He's about to punch Lloyd when Alice tells him to stop. But as soon as Belmont looks back, he can see the resemblance between her and the heroine. But Alice didn't like that he kept staring at her, so she goes up to him and touches his shoulder. Instantly, she feels the dual cultivation method running through her body. She says it's amazing, and Belmont recognizes the power activation. Even though he doesn't want it, his magic is activated, and the two of them are transcending. Staying the power is almost coming out, but Alice pushes them each to one side, narrowly saving his underwear, and asks Belmont if he's okay. He's a bit tired, saying there's something strange, his power was activated without him wanting it. Lacey explains that the girl is the descendant of the heroine and Alice wants to know who they are. Belmont goes up to her and stares, saying she looks similar, but the size estimate doesn't match. Apparently, it's not the same person. Maybe he's overthinking it. But then he gets slapped in the face, obviously. Alice apologizes, saying he's a blind demon. So he uses other parts of his body to recognize people. It's a good excuse. After chatting for a while, Alice understands the situation that they need a letter. But Lacey pulls Belmont away, saying they're leaving. But Alice doesn't want to leave because she wants to know what magic he activated. As far as she remembers, demonic magic has been sealed for a long time. Besides, she's thinking about how easily he found Lloyd's weak spot. Belmont decides to explain, saying it's something only he possesses, because he's the legendary. Lacey stops him, saying he can't say. He continues and says he's the legendary descendant of the incubus. Poor maid, she thought he was going to say he's the king. Meanwhile, Alice says she's never heard of a male version of a succubus. Belmont decides to explain. If she touches certain places, she'll feel something. And he gets stronger when she does certain things. He's interrupted, saying she understands and says the two did a favor by removing Lloyd from her path. In her family, they always learn to repay favors. The scene changes to the Hero Academy where all the other candidates have already entered. Alice and Belmont arrive running. The chubby guy tells them to give up if they don't have the letter. But Belmont obviously now has a letter from the Rose family, and Alice also appears, saying she's here to register. The guy's attitude changes instantly and tells everyone to go. When they open the door, they see a crowd. Everyone recognizes Alice and also notices the two demons behind her. Alice thinks that even if they manage to get into this place, it seems like it won't be easy to survive here. At that moment, a beastly girl is waiting for them, saying she didn't expect Miss Alice to register here too. She's Newt, and Alice says she's the person she likes the least. Newt comes and pulls her by the chin, telling her not to say those things, they're childhood friends. She sees the two demons and asks Alice if they're her servants. Alice warns her to be careful with the boy, that he's a descendant of the incubus. But Newt completely ignores her and sends our boy off on a spherical adventure, saying he's cute. Belmont finds it strange that his power didn't activate. Newt asks if he wants to be her pet, and Belmont doesn't respond. Alice pulls Belmont, telling Newt not to act like that. If she's feeling so hot, she should go home and not dirty the training field. They argue there when Belmont is pulled again. A white-haired girl appears behind him, sniffing him, and both recognize her instantly. It's Rostana, the elf, who puts Belmont to nap, saying he really smells good. Is it the power of an incubus? He awkwardly glances around. Rostana says she can't hide such good training material. What training material? Besides, she asks Alice why she's here too. Her brother got into school and snagged a seat at the academy. Isn't that enough for her family? Newt says she'll have to remind her of the old hero's contract. Alice tells them to shut up, saying it has nothing to do with them. Belmont is still confused about who they are. And Alice explains that they're all descendants of the heroes who defeated the Demon King. Belmont is confused. Heroes, as far as he remembers, there was only Alice. Alice explains that during the castle invasion, there were other heroes with her. It's just that the girl defeated him alone. Suddenly they hear a noise, lightning strikes in the middle of the hall, and a blonde boy appears. He introduces himself as Edward, this year's examiner. Everyone there seems to recognize him as a future director, and Lacey is scared, saying it's dangerous here now. But Belmont tells her not to worry. He doesn't have a clear idea of what activates the dual cultivation method. But after the activations he's had, he feels like he can manipulate any magic at the moment, so he's going to show what he can do. Lacey is impressed and recognizes that it's the same power he used to have. He really came back, but the thing dissolves in his hand. He realizes he's able to control a minimal amount of power. Not to mention the most incredible thing is that it disappears as soon as it leaves his body. Lacey doesn't understand why he seems to be proud of that. But the worst part is that they need to pass the exam, and with that, it won't be enough. She calls for Belmont, who's confused. She grabs his wrist and pulls him into a round adventure. He asks what's going on, and she pulls out another dragon's saliva from among the mountains. This will help him pass the exam. But it lasts a short time, so he has to take it right when he's going to take the test. But Belmont stands up and says he can't use that. She asks why, and Radiant, he says it's wrong to cheat on the exam. She's startled. What kind of demon king is this that cares about that? And tells him that the rebirth of the demon race depends on him. But Belmont tells her that he believes that demons are still much stronger even with the magic sealed. She doesn't need to worry, he's going to pass this exam. She relaxes a bit and becomes confident. But suddenly, a hand appears on top of the balls that Goku is looking for. It grabs the bottle and disappears. The hand enters the wall, and when they see it, Edward the examiner got it. He recognizes it as a magic amplifier and says it's an exam cheat. So she's disqualified, the magic circle grows, and she disappears. Belmont is startled, but Edward tells him not to worry. He just removed her from the exam area. But he's disappointed. He decided to pay attention to the demons who registered this time. Too bad she wanted to cheat. And says that demons never fail to disappoint others. Obviously, the school kids all hate demons. And Edward, seeing that Belmont is quiet, asks if he wants to say something. Belmont says it's nothing, but he guarantees that later Edward will apologize to Lacey. But Edward replies that he's not wrong to remove from the test field someone who is thinking of cheating. Our demon says the problem was that he called her weak. Edward ignores, thinking he won't do anything because this demon was brought here by Lady Alice. He then activates his power, saying he wasted too much time with these weaklings, and it's better to start the selection exam right away. A massive circle appears beneath everyone, and they are teleported up onto a tree. Up there, he warns that the test will be simple. He creates a bridge to the castle and announces that the first 100 to cross it in under 30 minutes will qualify. People think it's simple, and he starts without delay. Everyone starts running, but Belmont realizes something's wrong. His foot feels like it's sinking. The bridge Edward created is made of slime, and unless you have enough magical power and know how to concentrate it under your foot, you sink. Alice isn't doing well, while Newt, her bestial friend, passes easily. Edward smiles, seeing the demon boy drowning. Belmont is almost submerged and says there's no way out. They'll have to use the power left from the cultivations. He turns the slime around him into water, surprising Edward, who thinks he'd need excellent magical control to keep making that change. But when he looks, Belmont is swimming in the slime. Edward is incredulous. Even the Academy's professor doesn't have that much control. But Belmont smiles, saying there's more to come. People are gradually moving when suddenly tentacles emerge. Belmont startles, and Edward says there's no way he can be a slime that size. No matter how weak small ones are, large ones are unstoppable. Newt says they can't squeeze hard enough as she likes, and then she starts cutting everything. Rostana easily makes a barrier and blocks. A girl is about to go for another genre of work when Alice sets fire to the slime and saves her just in time. The girl thanks her, but Alice says she didn't do it to save her. It's just because the creature was in the way while thinking if she did it, he's a pervert. In this case, it's Edward who's making more creatures. He's impressed with the descendants of the hero's performance, but he's sure the little horn one is eliminated now. And then he sees a bunch of tentacles facing something. When the power lowers, he sees it's Belmont chatting and petting the slimes. Edward is startled. The slime's language was lost decades ago. Remembering how little power Belmont has, he says it's impossible until he sees a magic circle in his mouth. He concentrated his little power to create a spiritual communication magic. But Edward smiles with a vial in his hand. He says he's the examiner who decides how it goes. The slime suddenly turns purple and attacks Belmont, who dodges. Now it's oil slime, just don't let the Americans know or they'll come for it. The oil attacks him and Belmont realizes his foot is stuck and won't escape. Edward yells that finally this garbage will be eliminated. An explosion occurs and Alice protects him. She asks if he's okay. He's confused because she saved him but tells him not to misunderstand. She only came here because she was also trying to get to the other side. While Edward is losing his mind with Alice caring about this pathetic demon, but he can't hurt her or he'll have trouble. It's better to get that potion back. But the Guano starts absorbing all the other slimes, and Edward's spatial magic breaks. He won't be able to retrieve the potion he handed over. Alice conjures a fire magic and throws it at the oil, but it does nothing. And Belmont warns that it will be useless because that creature is under the effect of python blood. It's a simple potion that makes a person regain 1% of their power. Alice is startled, saying 1%, how did he become so strong? Belmont explains it's different for slimes as they are multiple entities within one. When they take such a potion, the power increases by 1% for each fused slime. Alice throws another explosion that does nothing new. And Belmont tells her to stop because it's useless, and she tells him to do something instead of criticizing. Belmont says that since she's here, there's a way he can win with that magic. She says if there's a way, he better do it soon. Hand on her waist, he pulls her close. She startles, confused and shy. What are you doing? I'm the professional Saliva Squapper, he says, feeling the power of jewel cultivation magic while she's there, not understanding anything. But she doesn't let go either, her hand is still there. Man, there's a lot of magic. He extends his hand and even the slime is becoming shy. But now Belmont realizes that his power is also activated. Alice gets angry and gives him an atomic punch, blowing up the boy. She makes a crater on the bridge and says he's beyond saving if he's thinking about that kind of thing in the middle of a battle. The poor guy's buried there, thinking she's scarier than the creature. She says she'll hold off the slime alone and he should call someone for help. But Belmont says she's not strong enough and will die before he gets back. She kicks him again, telling him to stop bothering her. And Belmont asks why she's still there even at the cost of her own life. She says as a heroine, it's her duty to protect people. Belmont remembers the knight said the same thing. Suddenly, the oil is about to attack her from behind. She creates a protective barrier that manages to withstand the first blows. But Belmont realizes it's going to break and there's an attack almost in her face. He jumps and pulls her. An explosion occurs and they're both thrown. Underneath him, she asks why he's still there. It's not time for him to play the hero. He tells her that if the hero's mission is to protect people, that also includes the demon race. And if that's the case, he'll pass this and become a hero. She says she understands, but why is he still crushing her? A slime is coming for another attack and she says she can't block that. Belmont says he doesn't need to block it and grabs her hand. She wants to know why he keeps thinking about these things. He tells her to shut up and focus the energy in her hand and she can feel her power concentrating in her palm. Our hero says he realized she does have a good amount of magic, but terrible control, and she asks what he's trying to do. Belmont explains that he'll just use her magic more efficiently, thinking that it doesn't matter if the dual cultivation method doesn't activate since he's the prodigy who mastered the 4 elements. As long as he has magic to use, he can do something. Transformed, the oil attacks again, but Belmont shoots flames and tears the creature in half, which evaporates. And he realizes that with that, part of his power seems to have returned, and on the other side of the bridge, everyone who made it is there. Edward is terrified that Alice might have died, but he startles when he sees our boy Belmont bringing her back and even telling him to his face that it seems he passed. Everyone is incredulous that Alice needed a demon's help to pass, and Belmont is getting angry at all this prejudice. Alice is thinking of killing him, she needs to kill him. But Belmont tells her she needs to focus first on staying alive. Edward then comes to talk to them and informs that the miss passed. However, the demon cheated, so he's disqualified. Belmont is startled, but the other students say they knew only a cheating demon could pass anyway. But Alice says he was with her the whole time. As difficult as it is for her to admit, she confesses that she only passed because of him. So she's a witness that he didn't cheat. Edward says she's very naive to think that, but he's a demon, and every demon had their powers sealed long ago. This means that if he used magic, he cheated, and then he prepares the teleportation circle, saying he'll do the judgment. But he gets punched in the face and falls to the ground. Bellman asks if he's tired of talking nonsense, and the teacher is baffled. Our boy warns that he won't execute him now because he wants to pass the test. Alice realizes he not only has incredible magic control, but can also absorb magic from others. Edward starts cursing, saying he's a demon, but someone is coming from behind, saying that they have an extraordinary student. Damn, is it just the student who's extraordinary? Everyone recognizes her as the headmistress. She greets Alice, who says she's under her care, and Edward tells her to let him handle things. However, the headmistress just tells him to hush and goes towards Belmont, asking if he cheated. He calmly says no. She then tells him to take a stroll with her, and the two are teleported to another room, a place that seems like a courtroom with several nobles seated around. The headmistress introduces herself as Karen Lynn, and says she has prepared a test especially for the two. However, Belmont says he's not very interested. He already passed Edward's test. Karen says it's necessary because both broke the Academy's rule. The first rule is that they don't accept demons, as the hero school was created to defeat them. And the second rule is that the Academy only accepts one noble from each family. Belmont says if these rules are secret and not everyone knows, they don't count as rules. Alice tells him to be careful and stop disrespecting the headmistress, but he says he's just telling the truth. The plump headmistress agrees, saying he's not wrong, but the test won't be difficult. And then she asks why they want to enter the Academy. Alice says she wants to enter the Academy to protect people like the ancient heroine. And Belmont says he wants the demon race to have the same rights as the others in this world. Obviously, none of the nobles around like hearing that. The plump headmistress laughs in their faces, saying that one wants to become the person who faces demons and the other wants to restore the demon race. She says she's excited about what they'll do and summons 2 rings. These rings serve as a test to see if they are qualified to be heroes. Belmont asks what happens if they're not, and the headmistress warns that the ring will drain their energy until they have nothing left and die. Alice says it's very risky, and Belmont asks her how she didn't know about this. She says she doesn't know anything about her family. Not to mention, the butler also hid everything. The headmistress says it's simple. Whoever survives passes, but Alice is unsure. However, Belmont says the person she wants to become shouldn't be afraid of a situation like this. She tells him to shut up, he's just an incubus. How would he know what she wants? The headmistress says enough chit-chat, and they put on the rings. Nothing comes out of Alice's ring, but Belmont emits a purple energy. Suddenly, energy starts coming out of hers too. The power passes through both their chests, and when they look, there's a knight with a sword in front of them, who claims to be the judgment ring and is now present in their hearts. So they are to grant the soul, greed, and lust for judgment. However, Belmont smiles and says it's just a demonic ring. The soul gets angry, calling him an arrogant brat. But then he sees Belmont's gigantic soul on his back, who asks if he recognizes the power. The soul immediately dissipates into the air, and the headmistress congratulates him, while Alice is suffering from various illusions, judging her, saying she doesn't compare to the ancient heroine and weaken her mother by being born. The headmistress says she's almost powerless and will soon be executed. Belmont conjures an explosion and throws it at the creature. The headmistress says his half-baked magic does nothing, and he has to respect the hero's rules. Alice says he doesn't need to worry about her. However, Belmont says it doesn't make sense. If you don't accept the hero's rules, you're discarded. He then hugs Alice and his hand is pierced. Both are frightened by this. But Belmont says it doesn't make sense for the hero's rule to impose their will on others. And even if it goes against their will, he will protect her. She sheds a tear, calling him an idiot, and at that moment, the circle on his chest activates. He can feel it's the famous dual cultivation, and an energy emanates from the circle, evaporating the creature. The headmistress applauds, saying, "Congratulations, you passed." They feel embarrassed but relieved. However, when she notices his hand on her shoulder, she tells him to let go, saying he's a pervert. After that, Belmont went to meet Lacey outside, who says it's difficult to stay there with everyone staring at her. Belmont says that place is perfect for him, and Lacey wants to know why it's perfect. He points to 1, he points to 2, he points to 3, saying there's plenty of races here, he won't need to go far to do the dual cultivation. Alice feels a bit embarrassed, but thinks it's all for reviving the demon race, so it's okay, and hands him a book. How to interact with the opposite sex of any race. What dwarf women like. How to make a beast woman fall in love with you. Alice says she's sure it will be of great use to him. Belmont says she doesn't understand his plans, but it's okay, she does seem focused on helping. He says he'll take care of things at the academy while she takes care of the rest outside. Walking through the corridors, he thinks he can't disappoint her. If it's to revive the demon race, even if he has to cultivate with all the women in this place, he won't give up. When he opens the door, he sees a bunch of sweaty muscle heads staring at him, saying, "Ah, this is the little demon boy who passed, he's mine." Our guy closes the door. Unfortunately, in this academy, the rooms are segregated by gender. In class, he's already finished, since gender segregation is the worst thing for this guy. The professor announces the student representative, who will be a guy named Ricket. It seems like people recognize him as the son of the richest man in the world. Not to mention, he's from one of the most powerful families too. He goes up there thinking this bunch of plebeians is lucky to hear his voice. The only person who can stand beside him is Alice Rosie. But looking at Belmont, he says that trash is tarnishing her reputation, so he won't go easy on him. Belmont takes a look at him, wondering why this guy is staring at me, and remembers Lacey told him to have a good relationship with friends. If that's the case, he needs to give a little smile. But the darn guy only knows how to make a villainous face that's his best smile. Poor Ricket gets a scare, this darn demon. Sometime later, everyone wants to recruit him for some student groups. But he's tired of it, he bangs on the table and says he'll face the enemy head-on. He goes up to Belmont, calling for him. Belmont turns around and Ricket asks what his intentions are with Miss Alice. Our guy flashes his super smile again, saying she's just a friend he knows. But Ricket says enough of that, it's time to take him down. He conjures a magic circle and summons a chimera. Everyone in the room is startled and Belmont seems to remember something. Ricket asks if he's scared, but Belmont is patting the creature's head and the fool gets scared. He summoned it just to scare the guy, but he can't control it. And now the creature will get angry, since these chimeras were once the strongest monsters controlled by the demon race. And having one in the middle of class is something scary, but Belmont is telling her to calm down, saying he knows it must be bad to be trapped by magic. But Ricket loses his temper and throws a chain to control her, which turns and attacks him. Belmont has to jump in front and save the poor guy. He slaps her, and she goes to the other side of the room. Belmont tells him to stop hurting the kitty like that. But the creature is already attacking him from behind. However, Belmont decides to free her from the curse. Using magic in his eye, he sees something inside the mouth. He activates a power in his hand and punches, and the creature dissolves, and when Ricket looks, it turned into a kitten. Belmont says he had several of these at his house. They're just cute kittens that can change appearance. Ricket, seeing that, says Belmont won't get Alicia for him. And Belmont says she's not a trophy for him to win, warning Ricket that he doesn't understand anything about women. And he's going to demonstrate now that he has a solution for any craziness. Ricket keeps asking, "What do you mean? What is this book?" Belmont is confident, saying he's learned something now too. He looks at the kitten and asks for a favor, activating a power and turning her into an inflated girl out of nowhere. In the room, Lacey realizes she handed him the wrong book. She was supposed to give him the version up to age 10, but she gave him the famous over 18 one. Belmont says it's time to teach something. In the corridors, Alice called Newt to go together to see Belmont. This is because she wants to thank him for saving her. However, Newt warns her that she's trying to steal the boy. Alice says it doesn't matter, and they open the door to his classroom. When they see it, they're shocked. He put the kitten on the table there and is giving it some spankings in various areas. To teach the best techniques from the book, the guys are all impressed, saying it's fascinating. And Newt says he's very bold indeed. Even Ricket is calling him Brother Bell now. Really, from now on, he's my buddy forever. When Belmont realizes Alice is there, he tells her to sit down as there's a lot to learn for her too. But obviously, she says he's a perverted demon. The next day, Ricket is warning everyone in the class that from now on, Belmont is everyone's friend. They agree and line up when he's coming, but he just passes by and ignores everyone who are confused. People want to know why, what was that about, and Ricket sees it as a friendship challenge. He needs to prove that he sees his value, so first, he greets him aristocratically, then militarily, and then gang style. Ricket gives up and doesn't know what else to do. But actually, Belmont is just thinking about when he'll have a girl to do a dual cultivation with. He wants to know why every time he looks at Alice now, she stares and gets angry. Newt appears saying she missed him, and Belmont recognizes her from the entry day. She says she was waiting for him to come talk to her. She whispers in his ear that she knows a little more about dual cultivation. Belmont gets a scare while Ricket falls to the ground in shock, thinking the girls know about the boy's vast knowledge. Belmont agrees right away and says let's go where. Alice hits the table angrily, and Newt asks what's wrong. The poor thing says she has to stop doing these things in broad daylight, but Newt says if she wants, she's invited for dual cultivation too. Embarrassed, Alice makes an angry face and leaves, saying what they do is none of her business. Sometime later, they're walking on the bridge and Ricket is following the two, saying he needs to learn the boy's techniques very well. Belmont asks what she wants to talk about. and she says she called him here because she wants to do a dual cultivation. Bellman asks how she found out about this secret technique. He thought she was talking about that cultivation, but she was really talking about the power. She says dual cultivation was established by the first generation of heroes, but since then, it's no longer a secret. Bellman wonders if this cursed magic was created just to deal with him. Newt is curious, saying all demons lost their magic, but she saw he had power in the exam. And he's so interested in cultivation technique that she imagines he has some connection. Bellman starts to realize that as foolish as she may seem, she clearly has some other intention and is being very attentive. If she finds out his body reacts differently to dual cultivation, she might end up exposing him. Newt reveals that the dual cultivation technique has a secret requirement. The person using it needs to remain pure. So how is that possible if he's an incubus? She points to him, saying she knows that in fact his technique is absorbing power from the opposite gender. That's why both of them were so tired. Bellman didn't know about this technique, but it's good that she's already following this path, since this way she doesn't suspect him. Then he asks her if she knew this is why she called him here to talk about dual cultivation. She says he's an idiot for asking these questions after she made everything so clear. Of course, she's here to kill him and suddenly attacks. Bellman seems calm, but Rickett steps in front and protects the boy. Newt says Rickett ruined the party and warns Bellman that he doesn't have much time left in this world, and with that, she leaves. We see a room where they're discussing the fact that Bellman is gaining fame in the school. People say it's Alice's fault, so indirectly it's the president's fault too. The student council president is Alice's brother, and Bellman is in a difficult situation right now. He needs to cultivate with the girls, but the school is all segregated, so he's not having many chances. However, in this practical combat class, he'll finally have an opportunity. The guys are all surrounding Belmont, protecting him, and he tells everyone to leave. Rickett warns him to be careful. The cat girl is nearby, and she'll finish him off. But Belmont tells him not to worry. It's just the two of them. But the fool Rickett interprets this as if he were saying he trusts him 100% and gets emotional, saying he'll always protect him. Suddenly, someone puts their hand on his shoulder. It's a guy named Brian, who says this demon kid is getting too cocky. It's time he found out how tough this demon is and goes to punch him without hesitation. Goodness gracious. But Bellman easily defends himself and puts his fist aside. In the background, Newt tells him to be careful, and Brian leaves, saying things are getting interesting. The professor then announces how the practical training will be. They'll go in pairs, it will last 4 hours, and whoever destroys the most puppets wins. Rickett is happy that in pairs he'll be able to go with Bellman, but our hero has already gone. Brian looks at Newt and tells her not to interfere. He's the one who's going to kill that kid. Newt thinks Brian is annoying. Suddenly, the two hear something behind them, and when they turn around, it's Bellman being very cheeky, grabbing Newt and jumping through the portal with her. They're teleported, and she tells him to be more careful. He says he wanted to talk to her privately, but he's there on a good spherical adventure. And he also says that she has a denser aura than Alice, must be something from the beast blood, right? Newt says if she tells Alice, she'll be angry. She's surprised he's so brave. Preparing to attack, she tells him to surrender. But her attack hits the golem that was right behind the two. Bellman tells her that these golems are made with a magic called Notch. She wants to know why he's talking about this, and Bellman warns her that unless you attack the core, it's useless to hit the head. Suddenly, the golem grabs her and she can't free herself. She tells him to do something, but Bellman warns that he's powerless, and even if they combine forces, they wouldn't win. But he says his eyes are enough to see through this. He manages to see the core and rips it from the creature. Another one comes at them, and he sees it at the waist and destroys it with a kick. He saves her, and she's impressed, wondering if he really is just an incubus. And then she asks why he's saving her if she's trying to kill him. Bellman says he realized there's something more behind this. If she really wanted to kill him, she wouldn't have called him to such a public place as the bridge that time. But when Bellman looks at her, he still has the absolute vision activated. And let's say he saw her as she came into the world. Obviously, bleeding starts, and she asks where the golems are that are causing him harm. They weren't golems, but they were certainly mountains. And elsewhere, Brian is killing everything, saying he's going to finish off that kid. Newt is trying to revive the boy who suffered from the bleeding. The absolute vision is an ability that only the Demon King has. He can see blood vessels and mana connections. That's why everyone seemed to be somewhat equal to him regardless of gender. But as he's weakened, the absolute vision turned into an X-ray. And the boy can't deactivate it, so when he wakes up, he suffers again. Bellman is seeing a body for the first time, and after explaining everything, Newt laughs in his face. How can someone be an incubus and not handle something like this? However, she approaches and says she now understands why Rostana was interested in him. She also wants to know why so many people want to kill him. Bellman asks if it's because he's a demon. Newt says it's partly because of that, but it's also Alice's fault. That's because people from other races hate her ancestors. The heroine could have wiped out the demon race, but decided to make a pact with them, and they remained alive. And now that Alice has entered the academy, and worse still, bringing a demon, everyone wants to finish him off. Belmont doesn't seem too worried and says it's a stupid plan. Remembering that the heroine wanted to end the fight between all races, he realizes that things went wrong for her too. Newt says they have to finish the class soon. Suddenly, Brian appears behind her, and now the two are trapped in a magic circle. However, Newt seems to be resisting and going against him, and Belmont notices she has something in her hand. Just as Brian attacks, she takes a sip and transforms into a tiger version of herself. He opens a barrier of strength and manages to protect himself from the attack. Newt wonders if she succeeded when a punch comes from the smoke right into her belly. He grabs her head and starts slapping her, saying she's very weak. Belmont sees dragon saliva on the ground while Brian shows some images of Alice, saying he'll deal with her later. Newt says he's trash and that she won't let him do that. Brian says he'll finish her off with a 3-layered blow, but just as his arm is descending, something cuts it right in the middle. Brian has no idea what happened, and Belmont says he regained 1% of the power he had, and now he'll deal with things his way. Death will fall upon those in his path. Newt is frightened when she sees him transformed, while Brian is going crazy, saying it's impossible to kill him. Belmont says he'll spare him if he apologizes to Newt, but Brian says that doesn't make sense. He'll never apologize to a demon trash. He starts conjuring several circles and summons an undead colossus. Newt is sure he can't win against that, and Brian attacks Belmont again, who easily stops it with one hand. Brian is in disbelief. It's the second time this kid has blocked his punch, but Belmont says it's very simple. You just have to see the path of the magic and neutralize it. With that, Belmont starts stealing part of the power used in the Colossus to summon his own, called Cain, who turns the Colossus into seconds. Brian falls to the ground without understanding how this is possible. Belmont's power created Brian's father, who was a guy who beat him and left him traumatized. He's crying, trying to escape, and an explosion occurs in the forest. Meanwhile, the president is coming to watch the test. Brian is finished, and he even went himself. Newt tells Belmont to stop. He has to control that power, saying he can't try to solve everything in the school just using magic. However, Brian comes to send another attack, but Belmont gives him a cut, and now the poor guy is armless and fried. It's better to give up, boy, enough of this. Newt still laughs at him, saying he's tiny indeed. But suddenly, Belmont throws her to the ground, and she says it's too early to do that, but she likes it. He says that after using dragon saliva, you need to spend the power, and the only way he knows now is this. She asks how she can help, and he squeezes her face. However, Belmont doesn't understand why the double cultivation method isn't activating. He starts shouting when Newt thinks. Wait, if he's an incubus, he needs to release his energy through that. And she starts showing him 2 magic spheres of very high density. Belmont obviously starts bleeding. He says the method didn't activate. He'll need to find Alice. But suddenly the president appears, calling him a demonic trash. Brian gets up and explains what happened. But the president says he knows he used his sister to threaten Newt. And if that's the case, he deserves punishment. He then uses magic, and Brian is suspended in the air. The president then says it's time to deal with a demon. The problem is, Belmont realized you couldn't even see the magic the guy used. And the worst part is he's being consumed by his power. The president realizes he's losing control and tells Newt that if she escapes, he'll forgive her since she's been acting as a spy for him. Newt says if it were her before, she'd probably do it, but she won't let him kill this guy. Belmont can perceive the feelings she's feeling. She's been acting as a spy for Alice for a long time. But as much as she hates all humans and wants to end them, she knows it's not Alice's fault. So she grabs Belmont by the collar and throws him flying, telling him to find Alice, recover his power, and tell her she sent apologies. She's crying, thinking it's okay as long as she can make Alice happy. She turns to the president and says it's his turn now, but Belmont is there again, saying it's really his turn. Newt curses him, saying he just cried and made the speech, so what's he doing there? Belmont says she's wasting his time since he even had to spend magic flying back to combat. Newt says he'd better run away, but Belmont says he'll finish this president with just 3 moves. The president asks if he heard right, 3 moves. Newt says it's impossible. No one can even understand the president's power. Suddenly, Belmont is surrounded by blue powers, but in the middle, Belmont breaks his magic, and the guy's secretary says no one has ever done that. Belmont explains that while everyone else uses magic circles to use power, the president uses a concept of time. It's quite complicated to explain, but the president is impressed that he realized it, but says it doesn't matter. And Newt realizes Belmont lost an arm. The president warns that his body is about to be consumed by his own power, and he'll only accelerate the process. He can try to defend himself if he wants, and then launches an attack. Bellman starts creating several barriers and Newt tells him to give up on her. But Bellman says if he does that, she'll die instantly. Does she want to die? Newt says she deserves to die because she betrayed many people, but our hero begins to remember the scenes when the cultivation power activated. Once it was when Lacey wanted him to revive the demon race, and he promised he would do it for her. The other time, Alice wanted to be protected from the creature, and he appeared to do just that. He says now he knows the condition and asks Newt what she wants. Newt shouts and says she wants to stay alive and apologize to Alice and become a real friend. Bellman says he'll fulfill that wish and exchanges a warm saleva. This one doesn't forgive anything. The whole place explodes and the president realizes his attack disappeared. In the middle of the smoke, Bellman appears carrying Newt, saying it took 2 moves and now only 1 is left. The president recognizes that he used double cultivation to cleanse the curse, and the secretary asks if he's talking about that double cultivation. And the president says yes, it's the magic created by the ancestral mother who defeated the demon king. It needs 2 people to use and generates some pretty fun sensations. But the president says he won't lose to a technique from 50 years ago. Bellman says he doesn't need to worry and it'll only take 1 move and he'll be done. The president says he's too confident, but Bellman reaches out and says, "Take this." The Endotranian portal appears and he jumps through it with Newt, leaving the secretary and the president confused. And the secretary says, "I think it's been 4 hours of training," and he was counting on that. On the other side, Bellman exits the portal with Newt in his arms and the friends come running. But as soon as he sees Newt, he becomes a little shy. Bellman says some things happened and Newt remembers the saliva exchange and gets off him, saying she didn't expect them to do something like that. Rickett instantly thinks he did something absolutely legendary. He managed to do that with an enemy, and everyone kneels down, saying he truly is the Great Lord. Alice comes running to talk to them, and the friends hide, referring to themselves as the legendary love triangle. Alice thanks Newt for being with Bellman since she heard some explosions and got worried about them. Newt hugs her, saying everything will be fine now. But suddenly the president appears, saying that won't be the case. It won't be resolved that easily, and then he goes in front of Alice, who becomes a little embarrassed, asking why he's there. He glances at her and then looks away a bit shyly. This president seems to have the famous sister syndrome. The secretary even tells him to have a little respect. And the president reveals that the boy next to her is the legendary 1,000-year-old demon king Bellman. Rickett says it's impossible and Alice says it doesn't make sense for that boy with droopy fish eyes to be him. She then asks the president, isn't the demon king trapped in the stone? He says the stone was destroyed and the demon king seems to have broken the seal some time ago. But she wants to hear some words. Can she talk to the person who was present at the time? The inspector from that time appears. The president points to Bellman and asks her if that's the guy who was there the day the statue broke. And the inspector obviously says no. The president is startled and asks if she's sure. The inspector says the demon king was a 2-meter tall, muscular, and shiny guy, not this skinny weakling. The president is a bit puzzled and says it's impossible, asking Bellman where he learned double cultivation. Bellman says he learned from Alice and the president freezes. Alice tells him to lie and that she never taught him that. He says actually the first time he did it was with her. The president is being taken away on a cart after this unexpected defeat. Bellman imagines the inspector as Lacey with some disguised power, but Lacey appears behind him. And then he gets confused and she even asks him if the inspector is some demon he hired. But she isn't either. He looks back wondering who she is and the inspector winks. A week after that training, Bellman says he finally understands how this double cultivation works. He needs to satisfy the partner's deepest desire, and he realized that every time he manages to use this double cultivation, he recovers part of his demonic power. He's not sure why the inspector didn't reveal his true identity, but he has to take advantage of this moment while he's hidden to cultivate as much as possible. But his room obviously isn't suitable for that with all those guys surrounding him. During the break, Rickett asks him why he's so sad if he even ascended to the heavens. But Bellman says it's not enough and far from what he wants. Rickett understands he even wants older girls. So he shows him about the clubs and societies. Bellman, needing to cultivate a lot, decides to take a look. There are the gardening girls who ask you to water their plants every day. There are the animal girls asking you to join a wild activity with them. Rickett explains that to rise quickly in this school, he'll need 3 heroic badges. Basically, he needs recognition from those older than him in school. Bellman is overjoyed and gives his best smile, thinking it's perfect. The clubs and societies have no gender segregation. But as he takes a step forward, the crowd of girls takes a step back. A step forward, a step back again. He understands it's because of the fame they created for him. Not only does he have the biggest men's club in school, but he's also involved with Alice and Newt. The only group that wants him is the buff guys, and Belmont runs away, thinking that getting involved with these guys will only push him further away from the opposite gender. But there's someone in front of him and he accidentally bumps into her. Of course, he falls into the most peculiar position possible. Belmont thinks that indeed the opposite gender is special and soft. The girl introduces herself as Felix and says she'll show him the fencing group. Belmont asks if she has any resentment against him and she says no. But from the side, they hear laughter, saying it's disgusting to see a demon and someone of mixed race together. She reveals her power, which is a fusion of the human race with the angel race, and says she's a despicable existence. He'd better look for another group. But Belmont says he wants to join her, and she is surprised and embarrassed. But obviously he wants to join the first place that has at least one woman. She's happy, saying that finally someone entered and tells them to go take the test. Walking around, Alice and Newt are looking for him and find him face to face with Felix. She warns that the rules are simple. He has 3 rounds to prove to her that he has skills. Belmont says no problem and a crowd forms around them. Felix then says she'll start an attacks. He activates the eye that sees everything there and there's an explosion. Even Belmont is scared. It was just supposed to be a test and she came with so much force that the absolute vision activated on its own. Alice then warns him to give up on this club. There's no one because everyone who tries to enter, she beats in the test. And when she loses her temper, she hits even her friends. Besides, she's the one who learned fencing from the legendary warrior Alia. Belmont remembers the day he was challenged by Alia and recognizes that the fencing of both is really similar. Alice tells him to stop fooling around and being a pervert and to give up. Felix apologizes and says it's better if they stop there. But Belmont says that now he wants a second round. He noticed that the moment he dodged her blow, she smiled. So he tells her, if I win here, you'll have to promise me something. Felix is a bit embarrassed while Newt and Alice already know what to expect. Belmont points and says, you'll give me what's most precious to you. Obviously, Belmont is thinking that he wants to fulfill her greatest desire for her. Felix is shy, thinking, most precious. What does he want? While the two now are sure he's the most shameless of all. In the end, Felix decides to agree. If he wins, she'll give it to him. And without hesitation, he activates the absolute vision and realizes that her mana and that of the sword flow is one. This means she trained a lot, but as long as he perceives where her energy is going, he can predict the attacks. She prepares and attacks, and Belmont is confident he'll defend. But what hits his sword was an attack with demonic Kai. Clearly, it was a trap, and now she's on his back. He manages to defend himself just a little, and the two are pushed back. She says it's incredible that he managed to react to that. And he thanks, saying that now he knows exactly what her deepest desire is. Seeing her memories, he can see that she suffered her whole life for being of a mixed race. Her father disappeared after impregnating her mother, but it was Alia who saved her and taught her everything about fencing. And she told her that there's no difference between races when attacking with a sword. Felix says it's incredible to see that he has a demon in his sword, being a first-year student. If that's the case, she can use full force on the third attack. Her friends tell him to give up, and Felix activates the light wings. She warns that amidst the illusions, he'll have to find the true sword. If not, he'll die from all the others, and Belmont says he's ready for whenever she wants to come. And she attacks, thinking maybe he was the one her master was referring to. While Belmont is thinking it's the perfect chance to swap the warm saliva, obviously. Felix remembers the day Alia passed that light wing technique to her and warned that if she found someone who could escape that blow, that was a person who could teach her more than she taught. She's going towards him amidst the flood of sword illusions, but Belmont is standing still in the middle. She goes for the attack, saying she wants to know what he's capable of. But the moment she strikes, his sword is thrown away, leaving her confused and wanting to know what he did. Belmont says he was sure that her habit of wanting to cross swords was the weakness he would exploit. An explosion occurs throughout the castle, and the friends are worried, saying it was a very destructive attack, he must be finished. But the scoundrel is there, saying he's just fine. Felix asks how he knew she was going to aim for the sword, and Belmont says it's because she's too focused on that detail. Swords aren't the only way to seek equality. With this phrase, Felix remembers her master and starts crying, welcoming him to the fencing group. Belmont feels that was the feeling he was waiting for to activate the double cultivation. He then approaches, saying it's time for her to fulfill her part of the bet. Felix says it's okay, she'll do what he wants. Belmont is going to visit a cave with the strongest muscle group in the human body. When Alice tells her older brother Felix to get up, Belmont is startled by the phrase older brother, and he remembers Lacey saying it's sometimes difficult to know an angel's gender. Belmont activates his X-ray power and finds out it's actually a swordsman friend, and now he's dismayed. The only thing he can do is leave a like on this video. You guys remember that the previous chapter ended when he found out that Felix is an elephant, even though he's a cute friend. Would you do Let me know. That was a reality shock for the boy, and 2 days later, he still hadn't recovered. His friends were all feeling sorry for him, not knowing what had happened. Suddenly, someone outside asked if this was the bastard's room. His friends shouted for him and warned that his sister-in-law Alice had come to see him. And strangely, upon seeing them, Belmont said he finally understood the thirst he had been feeling. After discovering about Felix, only the two of them could cure it. They were both radiant, and Newt, as always, was saying they hadn't done anything in a while. Now he's in Jibojo mode, saying that's motivation. Juicy Mountains moves this boy. Suddenly, Felix appeared, saying hi, and that was enough to ruin his world again. Felix arrived awkwardly and said he came to fulfill his promise and handed him a brooch. That's the heroic badge that only he as president can deliver. Alice didn't know he wanted the badges, but she would get 3 before him. Newt and her decided to join the fencing group since he keeps challenging them. Even Newt, who is a coming one, said it wasn't necessary to join the fencing group. But Alice got mad, telling her to shut up. She jokingly told him that in this second year, it would be good for him to get into the advanced classes with them. Hearing the phrase classes together made Belmont think, while Alice left, saying she wouldn't lose to him. Rick explained to Belmont that the advanced classes have few students, so they're not segregated. Obviously, the scoundrel got excited right away. Let's participate in everything possible. Rick told him not to worry, he would get both of them to participate in the Heroes Celebration event. But the next day, Rick got approved and Belmont got rejected. Rick was disbelieving because he tried to use his family's influence. Seeing the rejection, Belmont saw an X from a teacher and wondered who it was. They went to the office of Professor Aphrodite, who rejected him. Rick warned him to be careful. Aphrodite's family was extremely dangerous. Outside, they heard an argument that clearly seemed to involve Belmont. He decided to knock on the door first, not just barge in. But someone angrily opened the door right on time, and you already know what happened. The scoundrel did a tactile reconnaissance. He continued with a serious face, explaining he was about to turn the doorknob in a circular motion and squeeze it. While he was performing all those movements, the blonde girl didn't know what to do. Obviously, an explosion happened at the top of the castle. In the room, the blonde girl said this Belmont was a pervert who couldn't control his own desires. She kept complaining to the headmistress while Belmont and Rick thought she was exaggerating. He tried to explain that what happened was an accident and because he's from the demon realm. Sometimes he needs to touch to recognize who is who. She turned angrily and asked how many he had touched. He was about to start listing each of the adventures when Rick covered his mouth and warned that her name was Professor Klein. And everyone at school knew her as the teacher who had zero tolerance for love and had no desire. Klein was angry, saying he understood everything apparently. Karen coughed and said apparently everything was a misunderstanding. But Klein complained and said Belmont had to be taken to the disciplinary room. Hearing that, Rick was scared. That place isn't well spoken of. And Karen agreed, saying things could improve with a little discipline. So they went through a door surrounded by torches. There were several torture devices. Why were there so many blindfolds and whips, I don't know, but it's the torture room. The boy was tied to the chair, wondering why this place felt so familiar. From the darkness, Klein appeared. She warned him to be absolutely honest and not to show any resistance. He replied that he hadn't committed any crime, so there's nothing to be honest about. But she reminded him of what he did to Alice in the entrance exam, what he did to Newt in the combat exam, what he did to Felix to join the fencing group. It's already clear to everyone that he's an incubus with no control at all. Radiantly, she asked him to explain in great detail what happened with each of these people. Belmont became curious as to why she was so interested in the cultivations he had been doing. Unwavering, he stated that he had done everything with 100% control with his honor and pride intact. Through the door, Rick listened to everything, saying that his brother was honest and clever. However, irritated, Klein gave him a lash. It was an electric whip with magic that hit him square in the chest, but he found it strange. It seemed to have some sort of demonic energy coming from it. With a peculiar face, Klein asked when he was going to start explaining, but he asked her to give him one more lash. He wanted to feel the energy that was coming from it. That threw her off, but she warned him not to underestimate her. Outside, there had already been 555 lashes, and Rick wondered how his brother was still surviving. Inside, Belmont was calmly analyzing each of the blows coming his way. Despite Karen's attempts to appear cold, her whip carried an extreme heat. He realized that it was a manifestation of her desire. She warned him that he wouldn't leave without an explanation. Belmont realized that being from a berserker clan, she had to control herself a lot, and this was her only way to relax. He activated a power in his hand, saying that it made things much easier. Strangely, the whip in her hand turned on her. She fell to the ground, confused as to why the whip wasn't following her commands. He began to tighten around her waist, nearly killing the girl. Remembering the book, he used the techniques he had learned to attack her viciously. Collapsed on the ground, immobilized, there was nothing she could do. Outside, there had been 55,000 lashes, and Rick couldn't believe his brother would suffer so much. 20 minutes later, Klein was trying to get up, asking what he had done. Suddenly, Rick opened the door and asked if his brother was okay. From the ground, Karen asked how he got in, and Belmont said everything was fine. And he told Rick that his target was all the clans, which left his brother incredulous at his boldness. Klein got up and said the session was over and that she would approve his entry into the Heroes Celebration. Rick was happy, saying he had made it, and Belmont wondered why she had changed so suddenly. But Karen left, saying that on the day of the celebration, he would pay for humiliating her like that. In her first-year classroom, the teacher was explaining that this celebration day was to honor the heroes of the past who allowed them to be alive today. Just like in the past, they would form groups of 4 and survive events. The first test is a simulation of the war against the Demon King, where the group faces a teacher. The second challenge is a sacrifice in which they enter the altar and have to tell the truth about themselves. After explaining, Rickett asked what preparation they have to do. But Belmont was more interested in his book and said he really understood now the exact point he should have reached. Elsewhere, someone asked that instructor from the beginning if Belmont had really been approved, and she replied yes. A girl with a crystal on her forehead said this was a good opportunity to refine the material. The instructor said she understood and disappeared. It was Rostana disguised as an instructor, saying she needed to obtain his genes for refinement. On the first day of the event, Belmont was trembling in front of the statue of Aaliyah, and Rickett thought he was emotional in front of the sacred heroine, but he was counting something on his fingers with tears in his eyes. He was already at the number of 40 girls present to undergo the cultivation method. While Rickett thought he was analyzing the power of each of the opponents, the friendliest principal of all appeared and told them to form groups. Belmont was eager to join with a bunch of girls, but he ran into a muscle-bound guy with lipstick. He was startled, and they quickly asked Brother Bell to join. They pulled him close, saying this was the house of the magical Mickey Mouse. But Newt appeared in front and told them to let him go, because she was going to stick with that guy. The muscleheads knew she was a descendant and were obliged to hand him over. So to prevent him from getting hurt, they threw the boy onto the airbag. Alice told him to stop this kind of thing and focus on the challenge. Newt told her to stop bothering and find her allies. Alice said she would have to stick with them. Not because she wanted to be close like that, but because she had to keep an eye on both of them. Seeing the duel, he thought it was okay because they weren't weak. Newt kept asking who else they were going to call. Out of nowhere, Rostan appeared, saying she was going to join this team. Traumatized, Belmont said he couldn't tell by her size and wanted to know if she was a guy or a girl. Both of them asked what he was talking about, and he reminded them of the trauma. Radiantly, Rostana said she was a girl, and he gave her a thumbs up, saying that's perfect. That's how he wanted it. Newt said she found it strange that such an arrogant elf like her would choose a demon. Rostana said it didn't matter because she would lead them to victory. Alice didn't like that and said she would lead them to victory. From afar, Rickett was moved by his friend's group, so much so that he didn't notice there was a mountain on his back calling for a change in his body. The scene shifted to the dragon dungeon beneath the academy. It was everyone's first time there, and they wondered if they should split up. Belmont was observing the drawings on the wall. They were going to simulate the day of the Demacia battle, one of the most difficult, a war between armies of different races that claimed many lives. A message appeared telling them to recapture Demacia Castle. Belmont realized they were trying to divide them to test each one's strength. Rostana started, saying she'd see Belle later. Alice didn't like that abbreviation and told her to go on already. With that, she also went to her side, not before saying it was good for him to stay alive, and he said he understood. From the top of the castle, Klein held a stone fireball, saying his welcome present was ready. Walking down the corridor, he heard a song, an ancient demonic rhyme. When he turned around, there was some kind of dark energy approaching. Upon closer inspection, it was an army of demonic guards. Belmont said it was fantastic. He opened his arms and told the demons he was back, the first and only. But they ignored him and kept running towards him. He snapped back to reality. They weren't real demons, just puppets. If that was the case, he would have to deal with all of them. He activated his power to see their weak points. However, all the guards were carrying double juicy thick mountains, and he wondered when his guards had turned into women. He said it didn't matter because he already had enough power to deal with it. Gathering energy in his hand, he punched the first one. At the same time, Alice was also encountering some knights, saying the battle there was very realistic. But each of them could understand that it was just a performance and believed that it wasn't the hero's festival. Sometime later, Belmont had already defeated all of his. He was curious even about the size of the devil, when suddenly, a shock hit his back. He went to see what it was and recognized it as the holy volcano of Gardi. A message appeared saying that all members had passed and could move on to the next location, while Klen mourned that all of that was just the beginning. From the top of the erupting volcano, someone could be heard laughing. Belmont was curious if it was coming from the fire demon. Suddenly, a foot appeared and a lava-covered demoness asked if he was the one who would challenge her. Strangely, Belmont said her face was beautiful like that. Really, the guy is peculiar. That was Klen planning. All these women were there to distract him from the battle and make him lose focus. The only problem was that she couldn't control the power. So number 2 also had 2 large hearts. Alice found it strange because the demons had such developed chest muscles. Was Belmont going to end up like that too? While Newt was outraged because that flaming demon was bigger than her, Rosanna wondered if that was the secret to being strong. The demoness started moving towards Belmont, saying she was the Saint Guardi of the volcano, and he would only proceed by stepping on her dead body. Belmont remembered these were the words he had his demons say, but it was strange to hear them coming from this girl. She started attacking, saying he would have to confess all of his crimes and his body would be hers forever. Bellman seemed to have recognized those words from somewhere, and Clen realized she inadvertently left her phrases installed in the puppet. The demon punched the ground, and Bellman was surrounded by flames. He recognized it as an extremely difficult ability to escape alive unless you have enough magical power. Rostana seemed unaffected by anything. The demon was startled as his fire was extinguished, and the wind itself split it in half. Rostana walked calmly, calling it tedious, while Bellman stood amidst the flames, saying it was getting hot. A message appeared, asking if he would accept the help of an ally, but he refused, saying he was fine against these puppets because to maintain so much flame, they needed a lot of magical power. Because of this, he raised a barrier that he was sure he just had to keep up to survive. The problem was that it started cracking very quickly, and he realized that with the teacher supporting this creature, it had much more power than he imagined. Clen revealed that, in fact, the monster in front of him was 3 times stronger than the others. From the midst of the flames, Bellman emerged, and the demoness asked why he didn't kneel and beg for his life. Bellman said he hadn't done that in the last 1,000 years, and the demoness went to punch him, saying that if that was the case, he should just kneel and die. However, Bellman managed to dodge the explosion. With less than 10% of his old power, it wasn't easy to deal with, but he knew there had to be some kind of magical connection for this monster to be receiving mana. He then activated the eye that sees all. He saw the focus point right next to the heart. There was a magical core. The monster turned, saying he better be ready. However, Bellman suddenly advanced, saying it was a great opportunity, and pierced through the monster. She was all broken, writhing in agony. He fell to the ground and took a look at what it was. He realized that the core was providing magical power, so he began absorbing everything. Clen was suffering, saying she was being drained too fast. In another room, Alice and Newt were waiting for them, as they hadn't finished yet. Alice said she wasn't worried. She just wanted to move on to the next phase. Rostana appeared and asked why she hadn't gone to help him. Alice said she had already explained. She just wanted to level up, nothing more. However, Rostana explained that if anyone on the team failed, the whole team failed. Alice was disbelieving, and Rostana said it was a lie, it was just to tease them, leaving both of them outraged. Suddenly, Bellman was coming from behind, already taking a precise blow to Newt's warm parasite. A new message appeared, saying the Demon King lived very well with 108 guardian girls close to him, and one of the strongest was the guardian of Fort Demas, which one of the teachers will play. Bellman asked if everyone thought the Demon King only did explicit things, and Newt said everyone thought so. He was outraged, telling them to stop defaming the Demon King, when suddenly the doors closed and they had no way out of that room. Bellman recognized that he had finally arrived. From the heavens, a figure began to descend, and Bellman said he recognized the voice. It seemed familiar. A cute demon girl welcomed them to Fort Demas, and obviously he recognized her as Lacey. Newt was incredulous, wondering how a little girl like her had killed 2 heroes in the past. However, fake Lacey laughed, saying they should show their abilities. Naruto-style, she invoked a bunch of clones. Newt said she understood why the Demon King kept her around because one could do many things. Poor Bellman was tired of this. Then Lacey's clones attacked, and Newt went after them, saying she would eliminate everything. Alice was motivated, and Rostana said it was too easy. But Alice wanted to know why Bellman wasn't doing anything in the corner. He was counting at 71, and she wanted to know what he was thinking. He explained that he was counting how many there were, and Rostana said she had already killed 70. But Alice, looking to the skies, said there were still many. Bellman explained that every time they killed one, another was born, and the only way to win was to kill the true one. Newt said it was impossible. How were they going to find the real one among so many? Bellman activated the eye that sees all. Unlike the clones, the real person had mana circles running through their body. However, he knew that this challenge wasn't for someone with the eye, so how was he going to win without it? He then had a realization that there was a lot of magical power there. So he told everyone that there was a way to win, but it would require everyone's help. Alice questioned how he was going to do something with his horrible magical power. Bellman said it was by using their power. Alice was already frightened that he would use the trick, and Newt was anxious. With apprehension, Alice asked what would happen to them after they ran out of power. Rostana said humans really only care about themselves, and she felt sorry for the ancient ancestors. Newt understood that it meant that in the past, heroes also sacrificed themselves to give power to Aelia. Alice complained that this had nothing to do with humans. Rostana said to just look around the kingdom to see how much humans want to dominate everything, and asked if that's because Aelia was the one who fought against the Demon King in the end. Newt told her it wasn't time to talk about these things, and Rostana said that now that the demon race had been revived, what would the humans choose? Alice thought about the moment when Bellman defended her. Clenching her fists, she said she didn't know any of Rostana's plans, but she trusted Bell. She turned to him and said she didn't care that he wasn't human. He could absorb her power. Rostana liked hearing that, saying the more power he absorbed, the better his magical factor would become. Newt was in agony, Alice too, and Rostana was incredulous. She tried to give just a little power, but he was pulling everything from her. Remembering the message, Bellman knows each of Lacey's weaknesses very well. In the past, in front of the throne, Lacey warned that she had already cleaned all of his clothes and wanted to receive the next order. The Demon King said she was as reliable as ever. Bending down, Lacey said she would be loyal until her death. Belmont knew that, as his personal maid, she was his most loyal follower. She bowed when she saw a picture of him, when she saw a statue of him, even when she saw his shadow. Belmont knew her weakness was always to bow before the image of the Demon King. What he needed to do was attack her at that moment, so he made an image of the Demon King over himself. Lacey seemed startled, and he thought that was the perfect moment. But she ignored it, asking what he was doing. Belmont was curious, wondering if the shadow wasn't as beautiful as he was in the past. Suddenly, Lacey pulled out a whip and struck the magic circle. Belmont said that was a weakness of the Guardian, so why wasn't she following? Revealing herself from the midst of the transformation, Clem said that wasn't the case against a pervert like him. Newt recognized right away that it was the heartless virgin berserker Professor Clem who got angry, saying if she repeated that, she would be eliminated. Belmont warned her not to forget that he knew her weaknesses very well. She was startled, asking what he was trying to do. Without hesitation, he activated his power. Suffering, she wondered why he was doing that again. The girls seemed moved by his striking method, and Rostana said it was very interesting. Belmont said it was time to end things. Clen asked him not to do it, but he kept striking. She asked why he only played these childish games, but he realized something, and she revealed that she had protected all the points he had touched last time. Navi realized she was laughing at him like a fool and whipped him, saying that was the real punishment. The blow hit him hard, raising even smoke from the boy. Alice was scared, and Rostana didn't want him to be eliminated because she needed him to regain more power. Belmont was pushed back. Ending, he realized that the power of 3 beginners was not enough for a teacher, and Clan asked if he wasn't ashamed of himself. He activated the eye that sees all again in search of some weak point, while Klein kept striking and blowing up the entire room. The smoke covered the room, and she smiled, saying she had finally finished him. However, in the same way that he came to this world, he appeared, saying he had learned to block that attack already. Strangely, the teacher blushed and bled. The girls understood that her reaction was because it was the first time seeing someone's body. Clan was on the ground trying to recover from the shock. Bellman said that in the end, the protection she had prepared was her biggest weakness. He then raised his hands and told Clen to move forward. He wrapped himself around Clem to absorb her magical power. Clem was trying to recover, saying that as a berserker, she couldn't let this happen. She then raised her hands and a light exploded in the sky. The suppressive cage of desires closed in on her. Half transformed, Belmont wondered why she was doing that. Suffering in the middle, agonizing because her desires were being suppressed, he knew that if things continued like this, she would end up losing herself. Seeing the amount of power he absorbed from her, he thought that maybe he could use it. And for his own hand, he created a golden sword. That was the Demon King's blade. He jumped towards her, saying he would free her from all this suffering. And with a slash, the cage split in half. From one of the corridors, someone approached, saying they smelled the scent of the demon race, and that person couldn't let the demon race leave Demacia alive. In the middle of the room, no one could see anything because of the explosion. Fallen on the ground, Clen said she experienced what it was like to let magical power flow. While Belmont realized he had already recovered 20% of his power, Clen asked why he helped her in the end. Belmont said it was shameful how she suppressed her own desires. Strangely, she said his accusation of being a pervert was wrong after all. Around Belmont, the 3 were celebrating for passing the Demacia challenge. Newt pulled him, saying he should massage the meridians. While Rostana watched, seeing everything was going according to plan. Newt threw his clothes finally, for goodness sake. Alice asked if Newt wasn't ashamed, and she said no, she had seen everything before. Belmont now looks all demonic with 2 horns, and people are impressed with his outfit. Suddenly, an explosion rolls down one of the tunnels. They asked Professor Clen what's going on. However, she replied that it wasn't part of the story. This wasn't supposed to happen. Belmont told them to be careful. Something is coming. From the smoke, a giant, buffed-up wolf with an axe appears. Newt and Alice recognize it as the hero of the bestial race who died in the war, but Clen finds it strange. A war spirit not only appeared, but is very powerful. A little earlier in the battle spirit's room, one of the hooded ones asked if it wouldn't be very dangerous to release such a bestial spirit. The person said they would interpret it only as an accident, and it was clear they had a spirit of the blade. One asked if it wouldn't be very dangerous if the descendants died, but the other replied that if the descendants died, it would be an honor for them. Belmont had just jumped to dodge an attack and had to retreat. Alice and Newt realized that place was starting to collapse. Belmont warned everyone to flee. He would hold that guy there. Alice said no, they were going together to warn everyone. But Belmont reminded her that since he took everyone's magical power, if she didn't escape, she would die there. Clen then agreed with him, saying they would only hinder him. It was good for them to teleport. At that moment, the wolf came to give a blow, saying no one would escape. Belmont dodged and took the opportunity to go to another corridor to draw his attention. Meanwhile, together, they fled to the other side. Belmont broke the wall to go to another floor, and the wolf followed him. He arrived right behind him, about to hit, but he exploded the entire floor. Belmont began to wonder if 20% would be enough to defeat this creature, and the wolf was shouting that he would cut his flesh. Belmont then activated the eye that sees all to try to interpret his magic. The werewolf advanced, saying it was for the glory of the beasts. But suddenly, something caught his axe. He turned to see who it was, and it was Clen holding him. Belmont asked what she was doing there. She said that even though she was without all her power, she wouldn't watch a student die. In a flashback, a boy handed a teddy bear to Clen. She replied that it was adorable and asked if he had made it. Before the boy could answer, he asked if they could give him a little kiss. She was embarrassed and said he couldn't just ask something like that, but he came to give her a peck. Suddenly, lightning struck between the two. Her father appeared with a stern look, and she asked why he was there. He grabbed her by the arm, and the boy kept saying he would go to her party. She called him Evans and said she was waiting for him. The boy said he would definitely show up. However, that bear was burned, and Clan was trapped in the same cage Belmont cut. Her father reminded her to always remember that she was a candidate to be a future berserker, and that she would have to carry the family's honor. From that day on, he forbade her from getting close to any boy, and with that, she was sealed. Back in the fight, the werewolf is attacking her sideways. She smashes her face close to Belmont. The werewolf said it was shameful for a berserker warrior to ally with demons and then activated the chaos axe that swallows everything. Clen warned Belmont that if they took that, they wouldn't survive. Belmont looked to the side, imagining he didn't know if it would work, but it's the only thing he can try. He then apologized to the teacher while using Cain. He obviously attacked all the Meridians while telling Cain to tell him her greatest desire. In the flashback, she was sitting in the chair sad, until a voice called her and she got excited. She thought it was Evans, but it wasn't, so she thanked him awkwardly. Evans never showed up after that day. In front of the cage, her father said that was the training for today and sent word that the boy Evans died, and he sent someone to the funeral. She was shocked and didn't know what to say, and her father warned her that it was good she remembered her identity from that day forward. She knew his death was her fault and cried. Belmont is inside her consciousness in a blue ocean. He hears a sound and looks back. On the ground, that doll of the memory. But it has a red eye and stands up to attack him. He pulls out the golden blade of the Demon King and with a blow cuts the creature in half. Inside the bear, she was crying. Someone reached out to her, and she asked if it was Evans, who replied yes and said he had come to get her. In the battle, a golden pentagram formed under the two, and Belmont told her he would fulfill her greatest wish in his place. She thanked him, and the scoundrel exchanged saliva as always. He is a professional at doing that. The boy doesn't even spare the teachers. The bestial wolf obviously can't believe what's happening. But now Belmont is even more transformed and apologized, saying it was better if he had stayed dead. The werewolf jumped to attack him, saying he was a careless child. Holding the sword, Belmont said he really is the same child from the past. But with a slash, the werewolf's arm was torn off. He agonized looking back, but Belmont warned that it was already over. Clan was screaming that everything had turned to sand, and the werewolf warned that the power of the Chaos Axe couldn't be reversed. But Belmont picked up the axe from the ground and raised it, saying that in this world, there is no magic he can't control. The werewolf couldn't believe he was reversing the magic of a bestial creature. In the sky appeared a gigantic pyramid, and Belmont said he could now rest in peace as he did 50 years ago. With that, the entire field exploded. After that, they left a flower to honor him, even though it wasn't his soul, but only his battle spirit. Rostana said she was worried about beasts being controlled so easily. Obviously, Newt didn't like that and called that stupid elf to battle. And Clen said that even though it was a battle spirit, he still carried memories of the ancient heroes. While the others fought, she thought that even these ancient souls carried the will of the heroes. Belmont asked if that was the reason he was attacked. Clen said yes, but it was strange that his spirit appeared in Dalmatia since he was defeated in another area. Alice asked if someone was trying to kill Belle, and Newt wondered if it was Brian's doing again. Rostana, on the other hand, was worried about things going wrong and thought that she would keep a closer eye on him during this festival. Clan said everyone could go back and she would inform the academy staff. However, when Belmont was leaving, she called him. He asked if she wanted to remove something, just ask him for help, and he would do slimy, sticky things with her. She was a bit unsure of what to say, asking what that face was. Approaching, she said if anyone found out they did jewel cultivation, she would kill him. Elsewhere, those hooded figures were disbelieving that Klim's spirit had been destroyed. However, the others said they could stay calm because there were still a lot of festivals to come. And the second event was the Elite of the Immortal Spirits. A little later, Karen congratulated all 6 groups that passed the test. She said behind her was the gate to the next challenge. Belmont's biggest motivation was to give his best there to participate in the rooms with girls. Suddenly, someone called him. When he looked back, it was Rickett in the style of those weird jocks. However, before he could say anything, the other jock grabbed him by the collar and led him away. Karen gave the final warning that the next stage was 100% individual. Heading towards a group of girls, Belmont said he was motivated to do more dual cultivations. However, the babes appeared in front of him asking where he thought he was going. He was already grabbed and detained again, no option. Newt looked at Rostana and asked why she was following them. She said she wasn't following, just passing by. The giant door then opened. They entered the hall surrounded by statues. A voice told everyone to behave, and a statue of a Sagittarius girl told everyone to be quiet. They were impressed that statues could speak there, and Rostana recognized her as the heroine of the archer elves of the forest. Her name was Grass, and Belmont seemed to remember the girl. He remembered riding her back while asking if she was a horse or human, and unintentionally said it out loud, startling everyone. An eye of the statue seemed to have moved, and Alice warned him to be careful or he would be eliminated. Rick suddenly appeared, telling him to check out the muscles. However, an arrow came and hit him right in the chest, and the poor guy exploded, barely arrived, but is out. The statue then warned that Rick had been eliminated, and introduced herself as Grass, the elf heroine. A message written loyalty, honor, and knowledge appeared in the sky. She said those were the characteristics of a hero, and the test would begin. One of the statues came off the stand, and Newt was startled. Alice seemed to recognize the most loyal warrior of the human race, Mordini, and the message in the sky asked what was the reason for them to become heroes. A chubby boy who seemed to be a very important character said he had dreamed of becoming a hero since childhood. He bowed, saying he would become an example of a loyal hero. However, the statue said he was lying. The boy was startled, saying he wasn't, and the statue warned that he was neither loyal nor wanted to become a hero. Since his dream was to become a happy chubby boy, everyone laughed, saying he was exposed, and what he took was a blade in the chest, with the statue warning that the sentence for lying is death. Clem went to the director and warned that she thought someone had released the beast on purpose. The director said she understood and told her she could go. Clem was scared, asking if they weren't going to investigate, but the director said it was okay. She was curious to see how strong that little demon was. Will the boy fulfill a wish for this director? The chubby boy was lying on the ground, finished. People were kind of disbelieving that this really happened at the festival. Even Newt and Alice thought it was too much for something like that. Belmont activated the eye that sees everything, and realized that the boy's magical flow hadn't changed, and that meant he wasn't dying. Suddenly, the color of the guy's blood changed to yellow. Belmont was about to touch to see what the consistency was, but the chubby boy grabbed his arm and warned him not to touch, that he had just peed his pants. A while later, Grass was warning that Charlotte had passed. Newt came to answer a question, and the statue wanted to know if she would sacrifice herself to seduce a demon to help her race. People were somewhat disbelieving that the statue had asked something like that, and Newt told them to shut up. Newt said if it were a little incubus, she would definitely love to do that, obviously leaving Alice revolted, telling her to stop flirting every 10 seconds. But with that, she passed, and Alice was kind of glitched that she really won like that. The statue warned everyone who passed that they had to go to another area. It was Rostana's turn, and the statue asked what she would do if a hero betrayed her race. She said she would simply kill him because she didn't need friends. With that, she passed, and Alice was disbelieving that she was so cold like that. It was her turn, and the statue asked what she would do if she had to kill someone she likes to complete a hero mission. This question shocked her, and Belmont thought it was crueler than he thought. She suddenly turned and looked at him, and then replied that if she had to kill someone she likes, she wouldn't be able to. Everyone there believed she would be eliminated for going against the heroes. One of the girls even said that this was expected from the Rossi, but the statue said her answer was accepted and she would pass. Both she and the people around were in doubt, and the statue said that once Alice said it wouldn't make sense to be a hero if you don't protect those you love, it was the next one's turn, and the statue asked if the person preferred a buff body or a just soul. The guy in overalls said he wanted both, and the statue just let him pass. With that, several people passed and others were rejected, while the two seemed curious to know what Belmont would answer. In the background, Belmont knew that as the Demon King, he couldn't be honest or he would be eliminated, but he needed to find a way to pass without lying. Suddenly, he noticed something passing by him. It was a kind of invisible magic heading towards the girl with a bow in her hair. The statue asked how she would write a declaration of war to the demons if she had to do it. Looking at the size, Belmont recognized that it was the girl who hangs out with Alice's brother. She started talking a lot, feeling herself, but Belmont realized that her demon language phrases were all wrong and clearly she didn't know anything. But she passed and the people were disbelieving. She then deactivated her invisible magic and Belmont noticed something. Heading towards the statue, he was sure that he just needed to do the same and he would pass too. The statue asked who he considered the greatest hero of all. Everyone was shouting that it was obviously Alia. Even Newt and Alice were sure of that. The statue told him to answer quickly, and Belmont replied that the true great hero was the Demon King Belmont. Everyone in the hall was sure he would be eliminated. Even Alice couldn't believe he had the courage to say something like that. Newt, as always, was licking herself, wanting to know what the purpose of this was, while Rostana wondered why he was trying to raise so much suspicion on himself. The statue raised the blade, saying the answer was his. A little earlier, Belmont was sure he had found the answer. The statue had a kind of magical fluctuation that detected any variance when you lied. That's why the girl from the book used an invisible magic to protect herself from the statue's reading, who was about to strike him. He had put a spell so the statue wouldn't notice anything, but suddenly a lightning bolt passed and cut his power. He looked to the side, wondering who had done that, and it was the girl of the demon language, who was thinking that was just the beginning of what she's going to do to him. The statue began to transform into the spirit of battle, asking how he had the courage to lie like that. People were scared and wanting to run. While Belmont observed the hole in his armor and recognized something, the knight told him to die. but Belmont with a finger asked if he remembered the 100 rounds. The hero was scared, wanting to know how he knew that information. Belmont told him that if he still remembers, he should know who the great hero is. The knight said no, the great hero cannot be a demon king. Belmont then raised his finger and said he would help him refresh his memories. 50 years ago, a body fell to the ground. From the throne, Belmont said he had warned him he would die, so why does he insist so much? He sat on the throne again, saying that life as a king was too boring. He had a plan to make the heroes give up before they could reach him. In front of the castle, Ron Mordini pointed his sword, saying he had come to defeat Belmont. However, he was confused when he saw something. It was a message from Belmont saying that if he were a hero, he would have to play a game called the 100 rounds with him. Angered, Mordini appeared, asking if he thought heroes were friends. Belmont warned that if he played the 100 rounds, he would let him leave alive. Mordini said that was ridiculous. He didn't need 100 rounds to finish him off. Belmont then asked what he would do if after 100 rounds he was still alive. It was at that moment that Mordini said he would recognize him as the greatest hero if he survived that. Belmont said it was a deal. In a second, he disappeared from the throne and was in front of Mordini. A punch in the face, and the first round was already over. Mordini got up saying he wasn't ready. However, he took another punch to the face, and the second round was over. Mordini tried to get up again, saying he had to pee. The third round was already over. He said he was hungry and needed to eat. Belmont, on the other hand, wanted to know why he always got up the same way. And with that, many rounds passed. On the 29th, his armor had already been destroyed. And getting up, he said that now, without so much weight, he was finally prepared. Belmont began to cast a spell and said he wouldn't have another chance after that. With a laser, he broke Mordini's sword in half, and that sealed the 100th round. With him lying on the ground, Belmont said he had to keep his promise. But Mordini got up saying it was impossible to recognize the Demon King as the greatest hero. Belmont asked if children were all the same and he couldn't keep his word anymore. Mordini said he was a demon and had no reason to be fair against someone like him. Belmont turned away and told him he could go now. Mordini couldn't believe the Demon King was really going to let him leave alive. And Belmont said that according to their bet, he would let him leave alive. But Mordini didn't want to leave alive. It would bring shame to his family. He started cursing Belmont with everything he could. But he warned that no matter how much he provoked him, he would keep his promise. Mordini seemed not to believe that this was the Demon King everyone said was so cruel. Suddenly, the sound of a blade piercing a body echoed through the room. When Belmont turned around, he saw that Mordini had attacked himself. He asked why he did that. Mordini said he would only lose his honor as a hero in death, but those words could only be pronounced with his end. And in his last breath, he recognized that Belmont was the greatest of all heroes. He dropped the blade on the ground and admitted to everyone that he recognized King Belmont as the greatest hero he had ever seen. Belmont said he truly was the fairest hero, embracing honesty. In the hall, everyone wondered if they had heard correctly, and the girl who canceled the magic wanted to know how he put it back. At that moment, Mordini remembered that only he and the Demon King knew about it. So he turned to ask something to the boy, but suddenly a laser passed through his head. It was an arrow from Grass, and she said he was destroyed for showing appreciation to the Demon King. With that, she announced that the test had been completed, and now it would be the test of courage. A sound of a heel was heard. It was Fiona, the plump, perky, thick heroine of courage. Alice recognized her as the ghost knight who could fight through hallucinations. Fiona winked at everyone and said the test would begin. The simps were all in love already, while Belmont, looking at her, wondered why he didn't find her beautiful. Fiona warned that they would have to defeat hallucinations of their fears to pass that test. However, they couldn't use magic in that realm. Newt was confident since she had more physical power, while Alice was confused about how she would win something like that. Without wasting much time, Fiona said the test would start and turn on the flower shower in the room. Seeing that, Belmont thought that what he feared most hadn't been born in this world yet. The rascal was confident, but suddenly something shone in his vision. Fiona warned everyone that the most common fear in that room was of Demon King Belmont. Some were wandering aimlessly, calling for help. But for others, it was something different. In her hallucination, Newt ran in a green field. Someone called her and asked why she was there. A blade cut through the air, and a voice told Rostana to stop trying so hard because she wouldn't change her own destiny. However, Rostana said she would definitely defeat her. From her room, Alice observed a statue of her sister outside. The maids asked if she had already woken up and that she should go out for a bit, while she thought that she had never feared anything since she was always protected. But there were people she hated. The maids asked her to dress up and brush her teeth, even took her to the bathroom. But in this case, she slammed the door, saying she had to do something alone. She trained against Lloyd, who told her she had to stop suffering so much and maintain an elegant image. But she asked to continue fighting because she wanted to be independent. However, Lloyd said it was useless because she would never approach the true warrior she admired. All of her life, she only heard her sister's name, who was now talking to her, and she didn't remember her being so strong. The thickest warrior known to mankind told her that if she didn't want to live in her shadow, she would have to defeat her. Obviously, Alice was scared, but the plumpest babe said that was the only way to become a stronger heroine. Alice was motivated, saying she would never overcome her fears if she hesitated there. So she jumped towards the warrior to punch her. But with a movement of her hand, she was thrown from the center of the room. Lying on the ground, she said she couldn't win without being able to use her magic. The warrior told her that magic wasn't the most important thing to become a hero. Alice then asked what it was in that case. Back in the room, the girl with glasses had freed herself from the hallucination with her magic. Seeing Belmont from behind, she said it was the perfect chance to eliminate him. And Belmont seemed scared of something. In a cheerful city with a turtle resting in the fountain, a boy accidentally let go of his balloon, and his mother said she would buy another. It was okay. Suddenly, something cut through the skies. A hand touched the boy's shoulder, and it was Belmont saying he retrieved it for him. The boy was happy and thanked him. The mother looked back to thank him too, but recognized him as the Demon King. She screamed, and everyone in the city started running in all directions. Even the turtle hid in its shell. Belmont said he had always scared everyone in the world. So how could there be something that scared him? He just didn't understand how all these people believed in the same things. Suddenly, he heard a voice behind him asking if he had forgotten. Behind him was Alia, whom he obviously recognized after a very careful inspection. She asked if he wasn't afraid of being sealed again, and Belmont wanted to know if she was going to use the double cultivation method again. Alia said yes, she not only managed to use that method as a powerful force, but she can also use it to seal him again. The only problem is that it's not easy to activate. Belmont said he already knew that the activation method was fulfilling a person's wish. She said that was true and asked him what his deepest wish was at that time. 50 years ago, Alia had been defeated by Belmont. He told her that 7 days had passed, why she still didn't want to give up. But she said she finally reached the 7th day. Belmont was confused, asking what she meant by that. She told him that she had been intensifying his fears all this time. Belmont said that was funny because in the last 1,000 years, he doesn't even know what fear feels like. She asked him then if he would have the courage to let her approach. Belmont said she must have forgotten that he is immune to all elements. He released her near him, asking what would happen now that she was released. She laughed as something began to glow within her and a light radiated from her heart. She possessed an item that could reveal the desire of any person, and she discovered that Belmont's fear was not to turn certain desires into reality. He was in a trance because of the item she had used. Alia said she knew he had been stopping the Crusades for over 1,000 years, and besides, he was invincible, which made him afraid of never being defeated. With that, Alia approached and said she would put an end to all of it. That's when she did the first double cultivation with the boy. His strength dissipated, and he was confused about that magical element. Back in the illusion, she asked him if he still believed he was the Demon King without any fear, and she wanted to know if he had forgotten that fear. Belmont was lying on the ground, telling her to stop it. Alice seemed to be in a trance, asking Alia what the greatest need of a warrior would be. She was stumbling, and Alia said she could end that illusion at any moment. However, Alice regained consciousness and went to punch again, saying she would never give up. But once again, she was blocked and thrown to the ground. Alia said she would never lose to someone who was afraid of her power. Alice revealed that she truly feared her, and with the blade in hand, Alia said she would reveal how deep that fear was. She went to strike her with a sword, but she blocked it with her own hand, saying she didn't need to be stronger than Alia. She just needed to have someone she wanted to protect. Alia was speechless for a moment and said she had grown a lot. With that, Alice said she was no longer afraid of her. A light shone, and Alia said that's what she needed to become a great heroine. Alice seemed to be regaining consciousness when Newt told her to wake up quickly. She asked if everyone had passed the test. Looking at Belmont, she said there were only 10 minutes left. Rustan approached, saying it wasn't just him missing. And the girl with glasses seemed to be sleeping too. A bunch of knights ran towards the king's throne, but they were all easily defeated. Bodies piled up on the stairs to the throne, and from there Belmont said 10,000 years had passed. So why didn't it end? Looking at him, she warned that only the method of double cultivation would bring an end. Belmont was revolted, saying he wouldn't believe that, and it was just her strategy to make him use that kind of skill. However, she said that just looking ahead, he would see the warriors coming. Belmont said he didn't believe her. He wasn't afraid of the endless crusades since he was invincible in that world. On top of a pile of corpses, he said the Demon King would fight for 10,000 or 100,000 years. Until the end of the world, he would be there. Something appeared from the ground. He wondered what that formation was. He and all the bodies started to fall, while Belmont wondered if he was leaving the realm of illusions. After all, there's really nothing he fears in this world. He appeared in the middle of a classroom. Touching his own face, he wondered if he was really back. He just didn't understand why he was there. The girl began to turn around and he recognized the balloons. He knew right away who she was. Teresa said he had finally arrived. Belmont knew that if he was out of the illusion, he shouldn't be in class. He soon realized he was in some other realm. Teresa said that was a realm she had created and he would die there. Belmont said there was nothing wrong between them, so who told her to do this? Suddenly, she sent a beam of light right into his chest, and said a demon like him shouldn't ask anything. He once again asked why she was acting that way, and once again he was struck. Belmont was confused. She could not only create illusions, but also use magic within them. Remembering the magic she used in the statue's test, he knew he had to break some kind of power she had. Observing her glasses, he realized it was new, but the reflection was blue. Teresa said everyone has a destiny, and his would die in that place. With that, he concluded that those glasses were a magical artifact that he needed to remove from her face. But without power, it was dangerous for him to approach, so the secret was to make her come close. And with that, he had an idea. He asked if she was protecting so much because she had some kind of secret relationship with whoever sent her. He almost took a blow to the face, and she said that if he repeated anything like that, she would rip his mouth off. The crazy guy was motivated, saying that's what he wanted, and told her to do that with her hands. He beckoned her with his finger and told her to come closer and rip his mouth off. She clenched her fists and some lines surrounded him. Confidently, she asked if he was trying to make her angry. She approached and said she would tear his mouth off with her hands. But Belmont stared at her and head-butted her in the middle of the face. Her glasses fell to the ground and she was back in the Palace of Spirits, but with a beetle on her head. A shadow appeared in the background, asking if she had completed the mission she received. Desperately crying, she said she failed, and Belmont discovered that the one behind all of it was Teresa's greatest fear, Alice's brother, Adonis. From the ground, she apologized, saying she needed one more chance. Belmont wondered why she was so afraid of him, and Adonis said her chances were already over. She got up frightened, and Adonis said it was time to complete the contract between them. That caught Belmont's attention. In the hall, the girls wanted to find a way to wake him up. Newt had a very easy way to wake him up, but Fiorna's statue warned that suddenly waking someone up from the world of hallucination could cause brain damage. With that, she was pulled by Alice. The hall was freezing and Belmont realized the power there was increasing. Seeing Teresa frozen, he knew he had to find a way to escape from there. Seeing the glasses on the ground, he imagined that was the secret. As soon as he put them on, nothing happened, and now the boy didn't know what to do to get out of there. Adonis said the servant contract would be activated, and Belmont recognized that as her deepest fear. And since he was in her hallucination, he would have to help her resolve that. Frozen, she said she was willing to accept any punishment. As someone who controls all magics, breaking a contract was easy for Belmont. He jumped and sent an attack, saying that contract had gone to void. He was back in the hall before and said they could go back now. But Teresa was on the ground, asking to be punished even more. He couldn't believe she was still there, while Teresa said she loved him with all her heart. Once again, Adonis said it was time to fulfill the contract, and Belmont remembered that a servant contract only works if the person is willing to accept. Teresa said she would do anything the master wanted, and Belmont realized the problem wasn't the magic, but the inferiority she felt. He approached and told her to wake up. That one-sided relationship wasn't love. Smiling, she said he didn't know what love was. He was startled, thinking he really didn't know. But at least he had to help her overcome it to get out of there. He drew his sword, saying she couldn't move, but he wouldn't wait to die. But he took a snow blow to the face and was dragged away. Realizing so much power, he didn't understand what was happening. The message warned that he couldn't go against the fear that didn't belong to him. Freezing, Teresa said she would surrender to the master, and Belmont realized he was running out of time. He understood that only she could undo what she did, and then he went to return the glasses so she could leave the world of hallucination. As soon as he put them on her eye, everything around them dissolved, and Adonis dissipated. Belmont warned that time was already running out, and they had to get out of there. She said she really needed to leave before time ran out. But that wasn't the case for him, and she exploded him in front of him, throwing him into the tables. Belmont asked why she was being so headstrong and sacrificing herself like this. She replied that obeying Master Adonis was the purpose of life, and ordered the demon to die. Another explosion happened in the room. She was confident it was finally over, but Belmont had made a pentagram to protect himself. She didn't understand how he could still use magic. He said for him to create a copy of those glasses was very easy. She wondered who he was. It was impossible for a demon from this era to be so strong. In Jojo's pose, Belmont activated the eye that sees everything to find her weak point. But what he saw was much more impressive and juicy. The boy suffered the legendary counterattack, and he wondered why the eye that sees everything was weakened. She warned that in the world of illusions, it's not possible to see mana as the true energy is in reality. Belmont began to understand why he couldn't get out of there, and Teresa said that time was almost up and he would finally fail. In the hall, the petals on Teresa began to dissipate. She was gradually waking up. Meanwhile, Alice wanted to know why Belmont hadn't awakened yet. Teresa closed her eye again, confusing everyone. That's because before she escaped from the illusion, Belmont grabbed her by the legs and threw her on the ground. He warned her that she better take him along. As always, he had the eye that sees everything and suffered the counterattack when he saw so much places to visit. She said she would use a leg tornado to finish him off, and that really finished him off even more. He turned around and said that Adonis was a coward, sending such a thick, voluptuous, juicy woman to finish him off like this. Now she got angry, saying that Adonis was the best man in the world and attacked him. Once again, he defended himself and asked what kind of man this guy was to send her instead of coming himself. He approached and said that if she believes he's so good, Belmont wouldn't defeat him because she doesn't trust him. Holding Belmont's hands, she said she felt something she had never felt before. The countdown began and there was only 1 second left for him to wake up, when he yawned right on time. He asked how long he had been sleeping and Alice cursed him. Obviously, he was already pulled by Newt, while Rustana thought he would probably be able to advance. Teresa asked if this carnal temptation was what he called equality. Newt was confused and asked what she was talking about. but that made Alice notice that they probably talked in the world of hallucination, and then she went after him, telling him to spill everything. Fiona said it was for Belmont and Teresa to talk to her, and the rest could move on to the next room. Alice was confused, but they left. Fiona then warned that they both woke up, but the magic feedback shows that they didn't complete it. This is because Teresa didn't overcome her fear and Belmont was pulled from inside his. Fiona says that according to the rules, neither of them passed. Teresa then activated the power of her glasses. Modifying the data, she asked Fiona if she looked closely. Belmont couldn't believe she was trying to cheat again. But with that, Fiona said it's really amazing that both of them passed, and Belmont finds it curious that she made him pass too. Looking at him, she said she would leave a like on this video to help Mamoru make some plumpy, juicy content for his brothers. Turn on that cheeky little bell, and I'm out. Do you remember that the last chapter ended when he and Teresa had passed the test? Passed in quotes because she manipulated the test for both of them to succeed. We see those two hooded figures again discussing the demon, mentioning that, surprisingly, he passed the second test. The person in front says not to worry because he won't pass the third one. They open a bunch of compartments that hold the consciousness of the heroes. 3 years ago, someone was shouting for the queen's card to appear, but instead, a jack is shown. Teresa then appears and says it's her turn. At that moment, a queen appears. The other girls scold her, asking how she always manages to win, considering that this game isn't easy. They approach, saying they know her family specializes in cheating, certain she must have a way to cheat at this game. They slap her, calling her a shameless cheater. When the girls were about to start searching her when someone opened the door, it was Adonis who asked why they were treating a classmate like that. With this, the girls ran away. While Adonis was removing his cloak, Teresa tried to apologize, saying she hadn't done anything wrong. He ignored what she said and just covered her, telling her to be more careful. He handed her a card saying he knew it was hers. Teresa apologized, saying she only cheated because those girls acted like they were better than everyone else. Adonis said he didn't care if she cheated or not. She should join the student council and work for him since she had incredible talent. Teresa wondered if someone as important as him really thought she was talented. Back at the test, the courage challenge was over. Newt and Rostana were again exchanging barbs because of Belmont, while Alice wondered why something always happened to him in every test. Teresa then approached and told him to be careful in the last one. Belmont was impressed that she came to talk to him, and Alice told her to leave because she was there to protect him. At that moment, the statue told them to gather because the wisdom test was about to begin. Now that only 7 of them were left, this test would be much more brutal. That's when Belmont realized that his weak point, Felix, was there. Suddenly, a statue hit the ground and announced that there would be 4 examiners in the last test. The beast hero, General Pimenton, the dwarf hero, Dardanes, the elf hero, the mysterious Rockefeller, and the human hero, the god of strategy, Comport. Alice recognized all the names and said that they all died in the heroic crusade. Belmont thought they talked as if these people were incredible, but he didn't even remember killing them. Gress then warned that in the 4th test, they would have to answer everything correctly, or they wouldn't pass. She shot an arrow into the ceiling and said it had begun. The place went dark and no one could see anything. They then found themselves on a map and wondered what it was. The beast hero shouted that his people would never be slaves. They realized they were surrounded by the 4 heroes. Belmont was confused about whether this was the question. Newt found it strange that they were on this map. That's when Alice noticed it was the topography of Montagani. Newt recognized the name as the war that was fought on land and sea. Alice explained that it was in this war that the beast people made a strategic error and were defeated. The most dangerous person there said the topography was 8x8. In a way, it seemed like they were on a board. That's when Alice understood that they might need to correct Pimenton's strategy from the war. At that time, he was considered a genius on the battlefield. However, the strategy he adopted left the troops very separated. The demonic army took advantage of this and annihilated them. Later, they discovered that the best strategy was to dominate the terrain in a circular formation. Alice then used magic to make the change, showing the new positions, saying that maybe this was what they needed to do. However, for it to work, they needed to work together. Rostana asked why she was so sure this would be the correct formation, and even Newt was uncertain about it. Alice said it was her grandmother, Alia, who told her about this strategy and taught her it should have been used in that war. The group seemed excited, thinking that if it was from the legendary warrior herself, it would surely work. Rostana questioned again, saying that if she was wrong, everyone would be eliminated. However, Newt seemed decided, and the muscular guy with lipstick said that if that was the case, he would follow it too. Everyone seemed confident in this strategy, and Alice said that Belmont would be in the 6th position. Seeing that everyone agreed, Rostana said she had no choice and would stay in the 2nd position. Alice then asked Teresa to stay in the 7th. She seemed to not respond, and they asked if she had a better idea. Teresa was remembering that Adonis had asked her to eliminate Belmont because that would be the last chance. However, she also heard Belmont's voice telling her to follow her heart and think about what he had told her. She remembered the moment he said that a one-sided love is not love, but she decided to ignore it. In the end, she couldn't betray Adonis' ambitions. She would have to resolve this even if it went against Belmont. He seemed to be communicating mentally with her, asking if she would really stay trapped in this obsession. In the end, her love was nothing but selfishness. She told him to shut up, saying he didn't know Adonis. Bellman said that even if he was defeated, he would still be himself, while she would always be someone Adonis used. In the end, she was just a puppet without feelings or will. Pimenton then shouted that the beast people would never be slaves and never surrender. Alice realized they had to make a decision soon or they would be eliminated. With that, Theresa stepped forward, and now with the 7-point formation, they would win the Battle of Montagani. Everyone was blinded by a light, and when they opened their eyes, they seemed to be in a treasure room. By getting the strategy right, they had won the first question. Alice recognized it as the treasure room of the dwarves, and Dardanes, the dwarf king, welcomed them. He said that there were X of treasures in that place, including A of gold, B of silver, and C of jewels. The cave would explode in minutes, and they would have to choose the right amount of treasure for each to carry. Newt sincerely said she only knew how to do basic arithmetic, and Rostana sarcastically remarked that this was already too much for the beast people. A sheet of paper fell to the ground, and when they looked, it had a lot of calculations. However, the muscular guy immediately raised his hand, saying he had finished, and that, according to his magical power, he would carry a total of 58 kilograms. To him, the two greatest arts in the world were mathematics and bodybuilding. Immediately, the dwarf said he was wrong. Poor guy, he got all proud only to be disqualified. He tore off his shirt, asking how it was possible that the calculations were wrong. The dwarf said he was eliminated. Felix then raised his hand and said he could carry 39 kilograms. The dwarf immediately interrupted him, saying he was also wrong. Another fool who was left confused, wondering how the calculation was wrong. 15 minutes later, everyone was lost with no idea. Alice said that this was the legendary mathematical treasure of the dwarves, and that the hero Dardanes died there for not being able to answer it. She had done the calculation 10 times in her head, but each time it was different. This meant there was a curse causing them to miscalculate. Newt looked at Rostana, who said she wouldn't help her. She then thought about calling Belmont, but imagined he was too dumb, so it wasn't worth it either. Theresa was insecure, knowing that with so few people around, if she tried to cheat, the dwarf would notice. Suddenly, Belmont said he already knew the answer. Everyone was startled. He then said the answer was, "Before we find out, the scene shifts to a time when he was on the throne." Lacey brought a newspaper to him, saying that the dwarf had died there in the demon's treasure. Belmont said he had created the rule that a person had to leave with a certain amount of gold, so why did he die? Alice explained that he died out of his own stupidity. Belmont said it wasn't exactly that. He died because of greed. Back in front of the dwarf, he knew the rules very well because he had created them. The guy in front of him was the idiot who got stuck and died because of greed. He then turned to the dwarf and said that person could carry the most valuable thing they had in weight. This meant he could carry 66 kilos, which was only the weight of his own body. The dwarf said that answer was correct. The two girls were shocked that this fool had said something right for the first time in his life. Newt then raised her arm and said she would carry 44 kilos. Alice remarked it was unbelievable that she only weighed that much considering her dragon orbs. The dwarf said everyone was answering correctly and asked Belmont if he had heard the story. Belmont wondered if he should tell the dwarf, but he lied, saying the answer was written all over his face. The dwarf then decided to tell a story from when he was 18 years old. However, he disappeared and the elf Rockefeller appeared in his place. He welcomed everyone to the magical forest and informed them that they would have to answer a multiple-choice question. 99 coffins were placed around them, and they had to know which one Rockefeller had been buried in. Each person would have one chance, and if one person got it right, everyone would win. Newt said the probability was very low since there were so few of them, while Rostana thought things would soon begin. We then see Rostana's courage test in the realm of hallucinations. When she was a child and saw a burning scene, someone approached and asked if she wanted to seek revenge. Later, she was being thrown to the ground, and the person said her progress was too slow. Rostana repeated that one day she would defeat that person, but the hooded figure reminded her that it was the demons who burned the forest. She had to stop fearing them and become stronger to defeat them. Rostana tried to attack, saying she wasn't afraid and would seek revenge, but the voice faded, saying she would continue to fear them and never forget her fate. She fell to the ground, wondering why she kept hearing those words and why it was happening to her. A mushroom then spoke to her, saying that revenge was not her destiny. She recognized it as Rockefeller's voice, and the mushroom said the true enemy was inside his body. Back in the wisdom test, Belmont immediately said it was an extremely easy test, and it was the third option. Newt, frightened, asked how he knew, and he said option C is the best choice in multiple-choice tests. Rockefeller said he was wrong and that his turn was over. Lacey pulled him by the collar and asked why he hadn't checked everything with magic power before answering. The elf then said she was disqualified for planning to cheat. Rockefeller warned that it was forbidden to open any coffin before choosing. At that moment, Newt had an idea, but Alice grabbed her, telling her not to do anything foolish. Suddenly, she punched the ground and all the coffins rose. She knew that the only coffin with a body would be the first to hit the ground, and she soon noticed one falling faster than the others. She was sure it was that one, and Alice praised her. Even Belmont was impressed with her figuring it out that way. She approached, saying now was the moment of victory. But when she opened it, the body wasn't there. Rockefeller announced she had made the wrong choice, and now only Theresa or Rostana could answer. Verissa then said she would solve it. She was sure that creating a realistic illusion would be enough. She used her power, saying she chose that coffin. As they arrived to look, everyone saw the hero Rockefeller. He was identical to the statue. Verissa was sweating because she had used the statue as a reference. Obviously, Belmont knew she had cheated. Even Rostana was impressed she had found Rockefeller, who was known as the most mysterious. Rostana approached to take an item, but soon noticed it wasn't visible. Was it somewhere on the body? Suddenly, the body began to disintegrate, and Rockefeller said she had cheated using a false body. She would be eliminated from the test and had to leave immediately. She was banned from entering the Heroes Festival for 3 years. She didn't seem to care. She passed by Belmont and warned that the problems were just beginning. Only Rostana remained, and everyone was confident that maybe the elf would know where an elf is. However, she said she would choose the coffin closest to her, and that's it. She asked if she could open the others first, and the elf said yes. With that, all the coffins began to be opened. Rostana said that Rockefeller was known as the best at hiding. It would be very easy for him to move from one coffin to another. This meant the correct answer was to choose one and open all the others. Everyone thought only an elf would know that. With that, she stood in front of the coffin and told Rockefeller to appear. When she opened it, there was his body. Rostana called him uncle, and the others were impressed that someone who died so long ago was close to her. She approached the body, asking about the item. At that moment, the mushroom appeared on his forehead. She recognized it as the one from the hallucination world and was blinded by a flash of light. She found herself once again in the same place and wondered why she had ended up there again. She heard a voice saying that everyone in that forest had already been killed. Now it was just a matter of spreading the word to all races that the demons had done it. The other person responded that today was the day the elves would fall along with the demons. Rostana recognized that as the leader of the elves. Apparently, the entire forest had been burned just to start this war. Nearby, Rostana was crying. The leader said that a child who grows up in hatred always becomes the best warrior. Sometime later, the girls were telling Rostana to wake up. Newt informed them that they had passed the test. Rostana now knew that the enemy race was never the true enemy. The Demon King had always been their target. She couldn't stop staring at Belmont, and even Alice told her to take her eyes off him for a bit. A voice then said it didn't expect them to enter its session. It was the human hero, Comport, who said that the 4 of them were very admirable. It was incredible that there was even demon among them. Belmont asked the guy what the demon race had done against him. Alice told him not to provoke too much because that guy was the king of the magical labyrinth. Comport then said they would enter the greatest pride in his life, the infinite labyrinth. Alice asked if that wasn't the labyrinth he himself died in after finishing it. Rostana then thought that what Rockefeller had said was true. At that moment, the Demon King was her greatest ally. 4 doors of each element appeared, and Comport said they had 2 hours or they would fail. Newt already knew she definitely couldn't do it. She was terrible with directions. They were going to keep talking, but Rostana just told them to go because the countdown had already started and she was waiting at the exit. Alice was angry, wondering why that wretched girl wanted to wait for someone. She then said whatever, she would wait for them too, and left, almost entering Belmont's door. Inside Rostana's labyrinth, all the flowers were identical. It was impossible to tell which direction she was going. A small mushroom appeared, and she asked if it was there to guide her. In Alice's area, there were many strange constructions, and she had no idea of the way. For her, the plan was to destroy everything around and find an easy exit. Meanwhile, Belmont found himself in a dark labyrinth. He noticed a kind of tombstone behind him that read Mizoku's coffin. He quickly realized they wanted him to die there. A voice said that this was the fate the demon race deserved. He saw an illusion of himself being burned alive, another being electrocuted, and one being eaten by wolves. He imagined the 4th one would be even more cruel, and indeed it was quite cruel, warm and wet. The poor guy was bleeding, saying that in this one he would really suffer a lot. The voice said he would die in all ways and would even be consumed by his own desires. However, he would have to choose which path would be the exit. He smiled and activated the all-seeing eye, seeing an exit very far away. He ran in that direction, certain it was the exit, but when he got there, he found himself once again in front of the same cemetery. In the box room, someone asked if it was just to keep him there, and the voice replied yes. The kind of guy was questioning, and if he had to pay an even higher price. The voice said that even if the battle spirit disappeared, he didn't care. It was Comport saying he was doing it for the human race. Meanwhile, Nu was dying of heat. In her labyrinth, there were about 20 suns. She had been walking there for a long time, but always ended up in the same place. The 3 of them realized this was what the infinite labyrinth meant. Once again, Belmont ran toward the light and found himself in the same room. He realized he was trapped in some kind of magical trap. He had to figure out where it was coming from. A voice then said that an infinite loop was the meaning of this labyrinth. Comport appeared behind him and asked if he knew why he couldn't escape. Belmont wanted to know what he was talking about. Comport revealed that what they were experiencing was a manifestation of his true form. Flashback to when he was alive and on the battlefield against the demons. A night warned that the demon troops were launching a counterattack. Comport told them to retreat first, saying he would find a way to buy them time. The knights responded that it was impossible, but he insisted he would stay, even if he was alone. They tried to persuade him, but he threw them away, ordering them to leave. With that, he began creating a labyrinth, stating it was for the human race. Belmont then understood. Comport could have escaped, but to stop the demons, he stayed with the labyrinth until they were all dead. Comport confirmed this. His consciousness and magical power were eternal in that place. As soon as they found an exit, he would activate his magic, sending them back to the beginning. Belmont knew that with more magical power, he could break this type of loop. However, at that moment, he would have to think differently. He then said he would destroy Comport's fighting spirit. Comport asked if he really thought no one had considered that and revealed that if he died, the person who killed him would take control of the labyrinth. As the new owner, they would also be trapped there. Belmont made a JoJo-like face, acknowledging there was no flaw in that logic. Comport then told him to choose, die as the labyrinth's owner or die in the labyrinth. In the end, it was the same outcome. Belmont found it strange and asked if this wasn't supposed to be a 2-hour event. Comport revealed that once they entered, there was no time limit. But it was time to see how everyone else was doing. He showed that Alice was lost, Newt was exhausted, and Rostana was also following a foolish direction. Their efforts were insignificant. Belmont realized that Comport had created a moral decision. Comport said Belmont finally noticed. He could choose to become the labyrinth's owner and save everyone or die along with them. Belmont wasn't keen on paying the price for Comport's stupidity. Comport laughed in his face, saying that even when given a second chance, demons couldn't make the most of it. Belmont thought that in this life he had received a second chance. He met 3 girls and even lived new experiences. He was still the powerful demon king, but no longer the solitary demon king. Comport said that since Belmont wasn't making a choice, everyone would remain trapped there forever. Belmont replied that unfortunately, he couldn't stay there that long. Comport found this strange, and Belmont said he would have to be pulverized. Even if he had to merge with the labyrinth, he would find a way out. Comport began laughing maniacally, thinking he would finally get out of there. But suddenly, an arrow hit his chest and he disappeared. Belmont found this strange, and when he turned around, he remembered the elf who was his centaur knight, whom he had literally ridden. He had defeated her and ordered her to leave and bring more centaurs for his research. She had insisted, but he threw her out of the castle. In midair, she was struck by an arrow and fell dead to the ground. The other centaurs thought someone was attacking and acted wrongly. The blonde tried to tell the captain that she was Grass, the great archer, but he told him to shut up and not mention it to anyone. Now he was simply the best archer. She then told Belmont that this wasn't the first time she had helped him. He remembered the moments the statue attacked. She said she recognized him from when he entered the Palace of Souls. Belmont asked why she was helping him and what the point was of testing courage, loyalty, and such things. She explained that when the test was created, she also thought those things mattered. But now her plans had changed and she decided to follow her instincts. She dissolved and told him that from now on, he should also do what he wants. With that, a message appeared saying that Belmont had completed the test. According to the rules, everyone also won. Belmont wondered why everyone wanted to be a hero when all he had met so far only suffered. Outside, everyone was celebrating. Rostana came to tell Belmont she was looking forward to the 3rd event. The 4 were then announced to everyone watching. Belmont was congratulated for being the first demon to get so far in that place. The headmistress announced that the next test would begin in 2 days and advised everyone to rest. At that moment, Ricket came up and grabbed Belmont's legs, saying he was very worried. He dragged him away, saying he had to show him an amazing place. They ended up at a pay-to-play fun tent, and as soon as they sat down, Belmont called for 3 girls. Ricket was impressed. Belmont arrived and immediately chose everyone. However, Belmont asked if they were the ones who had kicked Ricket out. The girls, embarrassed, said they would never expel a friend of Mr. Ricket. Suddenly, they heard someone saying they couldn't fulfill that request. Some guys were talking to Lacey, clearly trying to hire her. She was refusing for obvious reasons, and one of them tried to slap her. Belmont stopped him, calling him pathetic for laying a hand on a girl like that. Lacey called for him, and upon hearing Belmont's name, the guys knew he was the one who had passed the festival. He turned to Lacey and asked what she was doing there. She said she was working part-time, just serving drinks. One of the guys told him to respect their boss because he was Andre, the last hero of the humans. Ricket recognized the name as the best student from last year. He whispered to Belmont that it was better not to provoke him. But Belmont immediately told the guy to apologize to Lacey. Andre said he wouldn't apologize to a demon even in 1,000 years. Seeing his face, Belmont was reminded of something. Andre said it was ridiculous that a demon had made it to the 3rd stage, and even more so that he was demanding an apology. He said he was looking forward to seeing if Belmont would even touch him in the 3rd event. Ricket thought the guy was being too arrogant. He asked Belmont if it would be easy for him. Belmont asked if it was okay to cut off his entire arm. The crowd told him to shut up and stop being arrogant, but Andre seemed excited, saying it had been a long time since he had seen such an arrogant demon. The next day at the academy, everyone was anxious about the finals. There was an announcement that to celebrate the Academy's 50th anniversary, the winners of previous events would also participate this year. Ricket saw Andre's name and said it was the same guy from yesterday. Remembering the guy, Belmont kept thinking he had a familiar face, that he seemed much younger. Versa appeared and told Belmont he should give up because he had no chance. Rickett shouted that Belmont was very strong and had taken on several members of the club the previous night. Theresa asked if he had really gone to the club just last night. He said yes. There was a lot of good stuff to consume there. Obviously, he and the fool only drank tea, but Theresa, blushing, said she never expected them to be like that. Belmont then said he couldn't give up because he was representing the entire demon race. She watched without saying much. At Lacey's house, she had prepared a banquet for him, saying all the dishes were traditional demon dishes. Belmont was happy and asked where she got so many rare ingredients since they didn't sell demon food. She said various demons had brought them in honor of the recognition he was bringing to their race. Belmont said he was touched. There were still brave demons. She then gave him something, more dragon saliva. She said that just by looking at him, he had already regained a lot of power, and this would help even more. Belmont said he would give his best. Meanwhile, the hooded guys were furious that a demon had reached the final stage. However, one of them said it was fine as Belmont had no chance of winning the championship. He removed his hood, revealing himself to be Edward, the professor from the bridge whom Belmont had punched in the face. Edward was angry, vowing to get revenge. After talking, they noticed a bat nearby. When they killed it, they realized it was magical, meaning someone had overheard the entire conversation. In another room, Theresa and Adonis now knew the hooded guy's plans. Theresa said it was fine. They had no way of tracking and knowing it was them who discovered it. Adonis then asked why she had changed her behavior. She apologized and asked to be punished, saying she got very nervous and didn't want to harm that demon. Adonis asked if she had fallen in love with the demon and if she had forgotten whom she worked for. Theresa said she would never forget and would always be loyal to him. Adonis seemed to ignore her and told her to leave. Theresa asked if they would warn everyone about the risks in the third round. He said no, he would only warn Alice. The rest didn't matter. In the next scene, Adonis was already telling Alice to quit because the last round wasn't for her. Strangely dressed as a maid, she said she would participate. However, he used magic to create a barrier at the castle exit, telling her she had no right to choose. From inside the castle, Alice used an explosion to break the barrier. It created a crack, and she told him not to try to stop her. Adonis was impressed that she could now break the ice barrier. She ran out of the castle, and he began summoning spears, saying she wasn't fast enough. Alice kept dodging, stepped on the wall, and went to punch him, saying she was no longer afraid of him. But he summoned more spears from behind her, causing the ground to explode. He thought she had improved, but still wasn't good enough. However, she had dodged and was standing on the ice, asking if she could go now. He said she could only go if she escaped this and sent 2 ice dragon attacks. Alice knew she couldn't escape with her current ability. Adonis said he would stop the attack if she quit the competition. But she didn't care about suffering that attack and said he could end her because she wouldn't give up. With that, he canceled the attack and smiled. She asked why he stopped, and he said there were many heroes, but he only had one sister. She was confused, and he said that meant she was now qualified to participate. She thanked him and said she would become a great hero like Alia. However, Adonis said the world of heroes wasn't as peaceful as she thought. Alice said she didn't care because she would find the heart of kindness. Her brother then asked how she knew that, and she replied that she heard it from the great hero. He seemed to ponder something, turned, and told her to go. She found it strange that he wouldn't try to stop her anymore. Adonis told her to take that crystal and destroy it if she was in danger, and if anything happened, he would also protect her. She thanked him, and he told her to take off that maid outfit because it didn't suit nobles, thinking that the moment Alia had mentioned had arrived. The festival was finally about to begin. There was Andre, considered the strongest by everyone, a fox boy named Pizzini, whom the girls loved, and a beastly dwarf everyone hated. The headmistress announced that it seemed Alice wouldn't participate in the competition since she hadn't arrived. New found it strange as it wasn't like her to be late. The headmistress then showed the map and explained the rules for the final round. They would be transported to Merlot Island. In that place, there was a hero's crest, and the first person to bring it back would be the winner of the competition. There were no rules on the island, but they could return to the academy at any time, though they would be disqualified. She warned not to trust allies or the island's residents. Andre was glaring at Belmont, and with that, the ceremony began. Alice was also teleported to the island because she arrived just before everyone was teleported. Professor Clem announced that everyone had arrived on the island and now depended on themselves. She asked the headmistress why she changed the island this time. The headmistress said there was no problem with the new island, but the professor knew very well that the island was extremely dangerous as it was known as the Island of Sins. Everyone found themselves on the island, and Pizzini suggested they work together. But the group found the place strange. Andrea then said they clearly didn't know anything. This island wasn't ordinary, it was full of criminals. Everyone was surprised by this information, and he advised them to run as fast as possible. An old man with antennae appeared, saying he came to welcome the students. New was excited, saying that finally someone was there to tell them what to do. Alice tried to stop her, saying it might be a trap. The man showed an academy badge labeled attendant to prove he wasn't against them. Pezzine said every round had an attendant, so they were overreacting with caution. Andrea approached and told the old man that if he did anything, he would pay a heavy price. They were then taken to a village. A man greeted them, and everyone thought the place was too calm. Was Andrea lying? Rostena asked Belmont if he thought the place was eerie, and he said nothing was eerie to him. At night, they were served a banquet. Everyone was obviously afraid to eat. New was about to be the first, but Pezine decided to investigate the food. He said it was all safe, but she would have to eat from his fork. Clever boy. Alice commented that the place was supposed to be full of criminals but seemed peaceful. The old man explained that they spread those rumors on purpose. When they first moved to the island, they were attacked multiple times, so they spread these ideas to keep people away. However, he asked the students to keep this secret when they returned to school. New relaxed, saying it seemed there was no danger there. Suddenly, something flew and struck the middle of their table. The old man shouted, warning that the barbarians had apparently invaded their territory. He told everyone that these were indigenous people living around them who always stole their resources. Andre smiled, saying things were finally getting interesting. Outside, 3 men were dragging the townsfolk and warned them that if they didn't leave, they would drink everyone's blood there. Newt said it looked like they had to protect the village people. Pezine said he would protect her. Alice wondered why the enemies arrived so quickly in this final round. She turned to talk to Belmont, but he had already disappeared. In front of the barbarians, the men asked Belmont what his relationship was with that woman. He said none. They had never practiced the dual cultivation method together. The man said that if that was the case, he would take advantage and move to bite her. But something rushed by and took the woman. It was Rostena who had saved the girl. She told Belmont she knew he wanted to protect the woman, but he couldn't do it alone. Seeing this, Newt jumped in to help him too, and Alice followed. Pezine didn't like it because he saw that Newt liked Belmont and followed too. The dwarf and Andre stayed behind, not understanding what kind of mess this was. The old man told everyone in the village that the heroes had arrived to save them. Alice realized those people really needed them. Pezine said they should calm down and think it through. But when Newt turned and said she would help, he got motivated and said he would help too. The barbarian angrily said they were fools for entering the island and would now die. The men charged, and the villagers said they trusted the heroes. Behind, the dwarf asked Andre why he, the strongest, wasn't participating. Andre told him to participate if he was so concerned, but the dwarf said he never did anything that didn't bring any return. One of the people was about to be killed by a barbarian, but Newt kicked him in the face. Pezine ran to help her, but she told him to get out of the way and do something useful instead of being a nuisance. The old man then said they could get information about the hero's insignia from one of these guys. Rostena was easily defeating them and wondered if this was really part of the third round. Alice thought the same, but at least there was no harm in protecting the villagers. The dwarf asked Andre if he really wouldn't do anything even with this information. He said he would wait and see what information they would get. With a punch, Belmont easily defeated those men. His hand was bathed in blood, something he hadn't seen in a long time. From the ground, the barbarian asked why a demon was helping the human race and told him to kill him quickly. Seeing the blood and the man asking to be killed awakened his demonic consciousness, which told him to kill. It seemed the fresh blood had awakened something in him. A man charged from behind, telling him not to get distracted in combat, but Belmont just stretched out his hand and stopped the man easily. Belmont was transformed and asked the man why he was trying to give him orders. Rostena immediately recognized that power as the power of a like in this video to help Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell and I'm out.